This day surprisingly started off calmly, but as usual, it didn't last long. Someone found something to complain about. This lady always gets into trouble, but this time she didn't do anything to deserve a slap. It was so unexpected and painful that she fell off her feet and still doesn't understand what she did wrong. This is Layla, the adopted daughter of Count Sonand, the only one who has not had a sweet life in this house, and from the very first day. And this is Louise, the heiress of the Count's house, and it is precisely because of her that Layla's life turns into a continuous test every day. Next to her stands her fiancé, Edward. Now he is no different from his lady. He likes it when Louise treats people like this. Sometimes he even asks her about it. This woman is a countess, Layla's adoptive mother. She doesn't often blame the girl for everything. But when this happens, everyone disperses to the sides so that they don't get into trouble together. And as for the Count, the girl's adoptive father, he makes her believe every day, at every opportunity, that, from the moment she arrived in this house as a child, her damned red hair and eyes have only created problems for the entire family. If it weren't for the royal family's request, they would never have agreed to shelter her in this house, even for money. And occasionally, they would say something like, if she were at least beautiful, they could offer her to King Henry as a wife and would receive a solid reward in return. They started talking about it now, after which Louise asked if it would be better for her to go to the royal palace, but her mother asked her not to make people laugh. They would never send their precious daughter to this king, with whom any girl would be unhappy. To prevent the girl from even thinking about looking in his direction, the woman told her that he was despised by the people for his repeated failures, and that there was a possibility that he didn't have long to live for various reasons. The Countess reminded them that their daughter was the pride of the house and that she would only marry a good and respected man. It seemed like everyone had already forgotten about Layla, but even after such a conversation, her half-sister said goodbye to her in her own style. As tea spills on her head, Louise asks her not to worry, because even after marriage, she will allow her to work as a maid in this house. And after that, the guy joined in with the words that she would always have something to do, and she would never step up to a higher status. They would personally take care of it. It wasn't without some advice. Something like, she can work hard for them, and that's enough to fulfill the meaning of her life. What can we say if even the maids laugh at her behind her back? Although she hasn't done anything bad to them personally, and even tries not to overwork them and does everything herself. And yet, they still call her a copy of the traitor, the so-called Crimson Maiden, for whom the whole country should be ashamed. Finally, this day is over. She can lie peacefully on her bed. But even in such moments, the girl cannot relax, because tomorrow will be no different from this one. And maybe even worse, she has no desire to wake up and try to change anything, because literally every person in this house considers it their duty to ruin her life and not give her the opportunity to be free. The Legend of the Scarlet Maiden, a tale from the past of the White Franks that everyone knows, even children. Long ago, their nation, the Kingdom of White Fran, we fought against the Kingdom of Dralius, ruled by dragons. Fran's decisive weapon was a girl with miraculous healing powers, but in the end, she betrayed them. She turned away from her homeland and joined the dragons, for which she will never be forgiven and will be remembered for decades, passing on information about the past to their children from generation to generation. In this country, red hair is a sign of betrayal. After the events of this legend, no girl with such hair was born except her, an orphan of unknown origin, left in the care of a count's family. Without schooling or education, the books in this room became her world. In this stuffy little world, if only she could break free and fly away, she would do everything possible and impossible for this. But for now, all this remains only in dreams, and only occasionally can she see it in her dreams, after which a small sip of hope appears, that someday everything will be fine. She doesn't even open the windows in her room, just in case she doesn't escape, although there are so many guards on the premises that even with the windows open, she would hardly be able to do so. Throughout her life, as long as she has lived, Layla has never felt that she is loved, that someone can stand up for her, that she is not alone and does not know what true happiness and freedom are. She has done nothing wrong. But just because of the color of her hair, she is doomed to suffer for the rest of her days, like a real traitor. It was another sleepless night, which was extremely difficult, due to obsessive thoughts that it will always be like this. It was impossible to relax, let alone fall asleep. The next day has already arrived. Usually people are happy about it, they have some plans, and Layla is gathering strength to endure everything that awaits her today. Usually, people wake up excited to finally find out what interesting and unusual things the day will bring. But for Layla, nothing will change. While she brings food to the table, the head of the family reads the latest news, which reports that their soldiers were destroyed near the border of Dralius. Their people encountered dragons from the kingdom of Dralius, meaning that none of the people had a chance to survive. This terrible news has spoiled everyone's mood since the morning, and only Layla is not interested in anything because she has enough problems of her own. She even feels better because they all got distracted and started talking about their own things, thereby not noticing her. She hopes that they will talk about it for as long as possible, so that she will have at least half an hour of peace. Meanwhile, the head of the family slammed the table and said that their king should pay more attention to diplomacy and finish them off forever. But Edward thinks that there is no point in waiting for anything, because the king is only interested in drinks and women. He needs power only to use it, and thinks that thanks to this, everyone he looks at likes him. When my mother started talking about how okay it is that this is all happening near the border, but if they invade the country, then that's when the real problems will start. Her daughter immediately asked her to stop. She hates it all. She's getting married soon, and these conversations are only adding unnecessary stress. After some time, Layla brought her sister fresh soup. It would seem that there is nothing to complain about, but she knows how to do it. Instead of asking for the portion to be redone, she threw the plate at her, saying that the soup was too hot, and she was tired of repeating the same thing over and over again, and if she wasn't more careful, plates would keep flying at her. No one reacted to this. Layla began to explain that this couldn't be. She checked everything exactly, and now she was very upset that she got burned for nothing. The sister also says that every time she looks at her, she remembers the Scarlet Maiden, the traitor who turned her back on the country. She believes that if that girl hadn't betrayed them, the dragons would have been dealt with. But they are still forced to fight them and fear every day that at some unexpected moment they might appear on their territory. So far, no one has come up with a way to stop them. If the dragons want, they can take over the entire kingdom. All the relatives picked up this idea of blaming her for everything they could, and Layla got used to it, so she just started waiting for them to get tired of it. The phrase that she shouldn't have been born at all, because everyone would be better off without her, sounded especially offensive. These words repeated in her head every second. It was already evening, and she was still thinking about it. People who say such things don't even imagine how painful it is not only to understand, but also to hear. She has only one question for the Almighty. Why did he put her in this world where she is not welcome and will never be welcome? Since the day she was born, life has never been associated with anything good. She is here as if on some kind of test that will never end. Layla closed her eyes for a moment, and at that very second, she felt as if something had changed, something more realistic than a dream, and something completely opposite to the world she had just been in. Here, she immediately felt some kind of peace, and also realized that this was not a fleeting vision at all, but something else. A second later, she finds herself on a huge gray dragon. Instead of fear, she, on the contrary, began to admire him. This is definitely the best thing she has ever experienced in her life. She likes what she sees, who is next to her, where she is and how she feels. She is only interested in what is happening in general. After a while, he dropped her off on some lawn where there were a lot of flowers, but because of him, she didn't even see them. She wanted to finish with him, but suddenly she felt that now was not the time, and it would be better to wait just a couple of seconds. The girl doesn't understand where she learned this from. It's as if something inside her tells her that everything is safe, and that's what... At first, there was some kind of strong flash. She even closed her eyes so as not to go blind, and when she opened, the dragon was not nearby. Instead, at the same distance, there was some man whom she had never seen before. This guy started hugging her as if they were some relatives who hadn't seen each other for a long time and were finally meeting. He starts to say something in her ear, but the girl doesn't hear anything, and she also has a lot of questions for him. Even though she doesn't have the strength to say even a few words right now, she still made it clear that she wants to hear at least some information about what's going on here. It's clear from him that he's clearly not an enemy. He can be trusted, but it wouldn't hurt to know at least some specifics. But what she definitely couldn't expect from him was that he would suddenly come up to her, grab her by the waist, and without asking permission, he starts kissing her as if something like this had happened between them before, and for him, there is nothing wrong with it. On the one hand, she is a little embarrassed by the fact that she doesn't know him, but she doesn't really want to resist either. And every part of her body starts to get very hot from every touch. And sometimes it's even unpleasant. And his voice, she wants to hear it more often. It sounds like it's the nicest thing she's ever heard. After some time, she began to touch him herself because it was no longer possible to restrain herself, especially since she understood that he would clearly not be against it. If one might think that the most interesting thing had already happened, then it was not so. A very interesting phrase was waiting for her, namely, she was born to meet him. After that, he began to slowly and carefully remove everything unnecessary from her, and she never once hinted that he should stop. Suddenly, the girl felt that when she wanted to say something, it was as if she had no voice. She couldn't do anything about it. Everywhere he touches her, it feels like the greatest pleasure in this world that can be. It could be described as if they were becoming one, but that doesn't even begin to describe her feelings. Suddenly, she saw that same flash that appeared before she saw him. This could mean that he will turn into a dragon again. The guy immediately asked her not to be upset because they would definitely meet again. She didn't have time to react to this, after which she felt that she was starting to feel a little worse. And then I realized that I was starting to return to that hellish world from where I came. And Layla was already here. Now everything that surrounds her is more familiar to her, but this does not make her happy at all. Now the girl will be even sadder. She has no idea when that man will come back to her again, and she also feels a little ashamed that she did that to him. In her entire life, she had never held hands with a man, much less kissed him, and she thought she hated everything about it. But since it came down to it, even if it's just a dream, she wants to meet him again. Now she just has to hope that it happens as soon as possible. Louise's room, everything that surrounds it, seems to indicate that the girl is preparing for a wedding. All the outfits provided to her are not so chic that it is impossible to choose just one. Layla looks at all this and can't even imagine how happy everyone in the world must be. In her place, she would definitely be the happiest. But few people know that in reality, everything that is bought, the family does not have the money for it. But they still borrow money from friends and acquaintances, just to create the impression that everything is the opposite, although everyone knows that this is not the case. While the girl was finishing her dress to perfection, her sister came and asked her to prepare everything for tea with Edward. Naturally, she can't refuse. Now all we can do is hope that later her sister won't say something like, "I asked you to tidy up your dress," which is what you've been doing all this time. After some time, everything for tea was on the table. Layla returned to her work, and since they were both in the same room, Louise could not sit still. Instead of any mockery, the girl, surprisingly, simply asked if these dresses weren't beautiful. But she has this look as if she won't stop there and will definitely say something offensive. Louise never said anything like that, but now she suddenly admits that she never thought she would be grateful to her. At first, Lena didn't understand whether she had misheard, and even asked again just in case, because something wasn't right. And here, the most interesting thing begins, which the lady could not have expected at all. The sister admitted that Layla was originally chosen as queen. After these words, the clothes brush fell out of her hands. But this is only the beginning. And now it is important for her to get ready. After this, she heard that the money that was used to buy this dress came from the dowry that the royal family gave her. And after that, the sister asked with a smile, hadn't she ever said anything like that to her before? And now Layla doesn't even know how to react to it. And that's not all. The whole family decided that she should be married to the man who only talks to girls for fun and is not interested in a serious relationship. It's very alarming that he suddenly wanted to get married, and the worst thing about all this is that the girl doesn't have the right to choose. Some time passed. She was very quickly getting ready for the wedding, and as it turned out, one of the dresses she saw was meant for her. Layla is already in the carriage. She has no way back. Only hope that after the wedding, her life will not become even worse. Because if this happens, she will start thinking about ending this life earlier than she should. Her sister jokingly addressed her as Her Majesty and said that she would perhaps take her to the palace, of course, together with Edward. The girl can't understand why, of all the people, they are accompanying her. It's humiliating, and no one will like it. The whole time they were all together in the carriage, she felt as if she was short of air in every sense of the word. There's nothing worse to think of. A sister with whom they are enemies. They are seeing her off to a wedding with a man whom she would be the last to want to marry. And in general, it's better to remain alone than to live with him. They couldn't drive peacefully. The sister, unlike the bride, was so happy. As it was today, her wedding was happening. She pretended to be worried about her, asking the question, "Is Layla really feeling unwell?" Edward responded that he had heard that brides are usually very nervous before the wedding, so everything was fine. They pretend they don't understand what the problem is, and looking at their faces, you just want to close your eyes so as not to see it. After all this, the two started bragging that they loved each other and that their relationship would be much better than some, hinting at their sister. Words cannot describe how terrible all this looks from the outside. If it were possible, the girl would have gone in another carriage, just to be alone and in peace. After a long time, my sister couldn't keep silent again. She said that apparently King Henry's taste is quite unusual. He was probably tired of ordinary women and decided to try someone with red hair. Then she stopped being polite and said outright that very soon her sister would become a laughingstock for the whole country, and she couldn't wait for that. After which Edward said that, in fact, when a nobody achieves success, it's a reason to be proud. Then they started talking about how they couldn't wait to have a lavish wedding, using the dowry the kingdom had given them. Layla doesn't even look in their direction anymore. It's unbearable to be with them. The girl is already counting every second to get out of here. Because of people like these, she had long ago formed the impression that all people in this world were the same as their family. It seems to her that if these people are like this, then the king, who has much more lands, will be even worse. It was already midnight outside, and they were still on the road. Nothing foreshadowed trouble, when suddenly something happened. After they had been driving quite calmly for most of the time, a bad road began, which they immediately felt on themselves, and it started to rain, which made the stone road slippery and unsuitable for driving, especially by vehicle. And that's not all. Maybe they would have survived the weather, but at some point, someone's voices were heard, which began to be very disturbing. Edward started looking out the window, then asked the driver what happened, why they stopped, and when I saw what was happening there, I couldn't believe my eyes because they didn't expect this. There are a lot of people around in knightly uniforms. Everyone has swords and the floor is full of red stains. He, of course, would like not to scare his girlfriend, but sooner or later she will still see everything. Suddenly, some man, apparently their leader, ordered his subordinates to immediately pull the king out of the carriage. One of the knights opened the door, and at that moment, everyone inside almost lost consciousness because it was unknown what these people needed and what could be expected from them. They carried out the order very quickly and started dragging everyone out into the street, but they still didn't say what was going on. As a result, all 4 guards, who tried to protect their masters until the very end, unfortunately died. The girl wasn't used to seeing things like this. She rarely went outside, so everything that was happening seemed much more vivid to her than it actually was. After some time, one of the knights informs the chief that King Henry is not in the carriage, although they thought he was there. The guy doesn't understand how this is possible. He had no doubt that they found him. Now he has no idea what to do next. Only now, Layla began to look more closely at this man, and suddenly the girl realized that she had seen him somewhere before. She can't believe her eyes, trying to convince herself that such coincidences don't happen, and he can't be connected to the person she saw in her dream. Although his black hair that shines even under the night sky, and his eyes that illuminate the moonless night road like the sun, suggest that she understood everything correctly. It was very unusual to see him so serious. She immediately had memories of how he behaved with her. This almost gave her goosebumps, and in the meantime, he turns to her with the words that on the carriage there was a royal coat of arms, which should only be used by the king. He has a question about why they were riding in this carriage, who gave them the right to do so, and whether they are ready to answer for such a mistake, since it turns out that innocent people died because of them. Although if you look at this situation a little differently, this can be argued. She ignored everything he had just said because she was much more interested in whether he remembered her. Meanwhile, the 2 assistants started arguing with each other, and it all started with one of them talking while the gentleman was talking to the girl. From their arguments, Layla and everyone else learned that the ruler of the country was in front of them. His name was Said. He's also the king of dragons. But after this information, the girl definitely stopped doubting that she could have confused him with someone else. What she wants most now is to know how it happened that fate brought them together and how it will all end. Now she doubts that they will let them go to the king, who is soon to become her husband, and she also wonders how he will react if they tell him about it. She had already begun to think that there was nothing to guess about. They would not be left alive, because dreams are one thing, and reality is something completely different. Suddenly, the sister began to take the situation into her own hands. She begged Saeed to let them go, and also introduced herself as the Count's daughter, so that he would not think that they were ordinary people, although this is unlikely to help them if he is determined to do things his way. At that moment, Edward decided to take advantage of Layla. He walked up to her, grabbed the girl by the hand, and pulled her towards that guy to say that in fact she is the bride of King Henry, and they arrived here as her escorts. Now it became clear to him why she was in a carriage with the royal coat of arms. Now there are no questions for them, and this means that Edward did the right thing. All three of them are sitting on the floor, afraid for their lives. Now Louise and her boyfriend finally feel like they are in the place of their sister, who lives absolutely every day like this, without the slightest idea what will happen next. And then Edward comes up with another idea, which he thinks is just brilliant, he thought. Why not? Offer him this girl in exchange for him releasing them, even said that she could be useful to him. He suggests taking her, for example, as a hostage, and Louise is happy because everything suits her. Layla, of course, expected this from them, but she didn't think that they would suggest it absolutely seriously, without even thinking about it. Saeed doesn't quite understand what they mean, to which Edward tells him that there must be a reason for this attack, and she is none other than the king's bride. She is perfect as a bargaining chip, no matter how terrible it sounds. Meanwhile, the guy was thinking about how unexpected it was that her escorts had given her away as a hostage without even talking about it with the three of them, which meant they weren't interested in her opinion. After this, he felt genuinely sorry for this girl. He looks at her and understands that she is not even trying to resist, because she apparently knows that it is pointless. And in the meantime, he tells them that, first of all, he never intended to negotiate. Frightened, Edward began to offer him his fiancée in a panic, just to stay alive, and Louise, at that moment, burst into tears and realized what he really was, and what he was capable of in such situations when it came to survival. That's not all. The groom offered that guy to do whatever he wanted with her, make her a slave, a toy, anything, just to spare him. For such words, the guy immediately made the right decision. He punished him the very second he was ready to give someone up to save himself. It was very fair. Layla was scared at first, but then she realized that he deserved it, and there was no reason to feel sorry for him. For a while, the two of them sat next to him and tried to comprehend what had just happened. But Louise couldn't stand it for long. She eventually passed out because so many bad things had happened recently that she wasn't used to it. Layla is a little more resilient in this regard. She is the only one who remains conscious, but that doesn't make things any easier for her. One of the assistants said that the girl fainted as if no one noticed, and after that, he asked what they should do now with the king's bride. The gentleman thought for a while and said that the guy's words made sense. Letting her go would be too easy. And after that, Layla really got tense, because she doesn't understand what this could mean. What she fears most is that he will treat her as mercilessly as he did the others. And that is quite likely. For a while he was silent, didn't even look at her, and stood in one place with his eyes closed, and then suddenly opened them. He came closer and started apologizing, but at that moment she couldn't believe her ears. She couldn't even imagine that she could hear such a thing from him, especially after everything that happened here. Then he took her in his arms. Layla immediately remembered that very moment from the dream, and even thought that maybe he wasn't so bad. Since he hasn't gotten rid of her yet, that means he won't do it anytime soon, so he can relax for now. He says that for now he will take this girl to the royal palace as a hostage, and her fate will be decided later. Then he ordered all his assistants to go to the capital, and warned that if they fell behind, they would not have to wait for him. Then he asked if everyone understood and heard him. The knights answered in one voice that they understood everything and were ready to go. Layla didn't think that she would ever end up in the kingdom of Dralius this way, although perhaps it would be better than staying in the count's house or marrying the king. This guy would at least delay this moment, and that's not bad. She's really scared inside about what will happen next, but that's absolutely normal. Right now, she just needs to avoid thinking about the bad, because such thoughts will only make things worse for herself. At some point along the way, he hugged her and apologized again for scaring her. And since the girl doesn't hear such words often, it was very pleasant for her. He asked her to hold on tight. There was very little time left, and he also said words after which Layla finally stopped being afraid of him. He promised to treat her with respect, even though she would be held hostage by them. This calms her down a lot. Since such a person promises something, it means that it will happen that way. At some point, he remembers that he never asked her name. The girl introduced herself, and he said that she had a very beautiful name. During this entire journey, She heard more pleasant words from him than she had ever heard in her entire life. Meanwhile, the knights of that kingdom are beginning to gradually come to their senses. Some, surprisingly, even survived. Here's one already crawling, trying to get to his feet and figure out if there's any danger nearby. Although if there was, he would have been finished off right away. The first thing he thought was that he needed to immediately inform His Majesty about this. Otherwise, they would lose their bride, and he personally would lose his job. He returned so quickly that he surprised himself. In any case, it is not so important now. The main thing is how to decide to tell this terrible news to the gentleman. While the horse was resting, he ran to his office and thought in advance about the best words to talk to him. He just entered this room and saw a terrible sight that almost made him lose consciousness, but he still managed to stay on his feet. He doesn't believe his eyes, and he doesn't even immediately see the man who is standing next to him, and who probably has something to do with the death of the king. The knight asks who he is because he doesn't remember the king inviting anyone to visit him or having any important meeting. The guy came up to him and then plunged his sword into him, saying that his job was to deliver the bride safe and sound, but he didn't do it, so he was getting what he deserved. It's not clear yet what this has to do with the matter, because what's much more important is that someone just killed the king, and now one of his knights too. And then this guy who ended up here suddenly started talking about some trash, and then he touches a dirty blade, and says that the scarlet maiden must be returned immediately, because her real task is to meet with him, and if necessary, he will help her with this. The capital of the kingdom of Dralias. The girl had never seen this area from above before. A beautiful view opens up here that she will remember forever. She tries to say how beautiful it is here, but it doesn't work because there aren't enough words to describe her emotions. He knew she would like it here, because even though he had been here many times, every time he admired the views as if for the first time. The Dragon King says that they welcome her, and perhaps she will even like it here more than where she was. Meanwhile, a disgruntled father and his daughter arrived at the royal palace, apparently having learned about what had happened. Everyone has already been informed that the esteemed Count Sanand has arrived. The gates have begun to open, which means that something interesting is about to begin. The lady is escorted under an umbrella so that she doesn't get wet, especially her hairstyle, which took several hours to create. It's so important to her that even if a drop falls on her hair, this day will be ruined for her instantly. It's not clear yet whether they know anything or not, although it's probably not that important anymore, because today they'll find out everything anyway. The man asks this to clear the way for the king's bride, which means that they haven't heard anything and will find out very soon. Weiss, as soon as he heard that the king's bride was among them, immediately focused on her with his crazy gaze, which means that he will not leave her alone. Meanwhile, the Dragon King had already led the saint into the territory. She thought that there would be almost no one here, but inside, there were so many people, as if there was some kind of event today. She wasn't ready for this. She has to smile in front of them and try not to show that they all make her very uncomfortable. Everyone gathered in one place, some to look at her, some to call her names, and some already perceive her as an enemy from the very beginning. And it's understandable. The king rarely brings women here, and today, when someone was seen with him, it's something new for the residents that can't be missed. At that moment, the guy called his assistant because he had a lot of things to do and he needed help with the girl. The assistant quickly approached, but she was upset by his voice. He spoke to her as if she had done something wrong. Meanwhile, the gentleman announced that this was his guest and asked her to be as polite as possible. It's clear from her that she, like everyone else, is unhappy with her appearance. The woman is unlikely to find an approach to the girl, at least because she's not interested. Meanwhile, the king blames himself for allowing her to walk in front of everyone in this dirty wedding dress. Firstly, some people thought that she was his bride, and secondly, he ruined her first impression. The first thing he ordered was to find a change of clothes for her, because it was simply not appropriate to be in such a dress, and she was probably very comfortable like that. He also asked her to come to his chambers immediately after she changed. He will wait for her there, but the girl has no idea what will happen next and why they should meet there and not, for example, in some park. Meanwhile, an important conversation is taking place in the prince's office regarding the arrival of the king's bride. Glenn, the personal knight strategist, and also an old friend of Saeed's. One of the assistants asks, besides Lady Layla, if there are any other witnesses to the attack, because it is very important. The prince says there is only one witness, Layla's younger sister Not, but she fainted, so they left her alone. to which the assistant says that if they do not get rid of all the witnesses, the unrest will continue. Glenn believes that the assistant is right. The witness can bring a lot of problems, and the prince doesn't even deny it. Apparently, they'll have to find some kind of compromise. Glenn says that the master has always been soft towards women. It must be thanks to his kind mother, but sometimes it can only make things worse. While they are talking about this, the prince sits, stares at one point, and thinks about something, as if he is trying to find a way out, and the most correct one at that. In order not to waste too much time on this, Glenn asked only one question: what the gentleman ultimately plans to do with this young lady, and also hinted that if he does not have a clear position, then he needs to think about it as soon as possible, to which he said that he was going to return her when the time came, but for now, he didn't have a clear understanding. At that moment, he asked himself why he had brought her here at all, but no answer came to his mind. When he looks at her, it seems to him as if he is remembering someone close to him, like some kind of nostalgia, but at the same time he understands that this is impossible, and she is a complete stranger to him. It even seemed to him that he had finally gone crazy, but for some reason, this didn't upset him at all. Time passed. Layla had already changed her clothes, and then, as he told her, she came to his room before entering. She naturally knocked, warned that it was her, and immediately after that her hands started shaking, because no one had told her what would happen next. She will always feel trapped there, just like in this kingdom. Or maybe she's just scaring herself in vain and everything will be fine. The girl came to the door to say that this dress was so luxurious that she wasn't even worthy of it. And he looked at her and thought, how can she even say such a thing, since it was as if it was made for her? He says that she shouldn't be shy because she looks simply irresistible in this outfit, and he has never seen anything more beautiful on a girl. It turns out that for the first time in her life, someone complimented her for simply putting something on. Then he invited her to sit down next to him, and she was already trying to draw some conclusions from his behavior, although she wasn't really succeeding yet. He thought she was probably tired, so the guy apologized again for bringing her here so unexpectedly and leaving her with almost no choice. He also thought that her parents must be worried about where she is now, and now he wonders if she will tell him what is what, how she ended up here, and how long ago. Layla thought that he wasn't familiar enough with her yet for her to tell him everything about herself, so she replied that they were probably looking for her, and for him this would be another reason to let her go quickly. At that moment, he thought that it was probably time to change the subject so as not to talk about bad things. But they had little in common, and it would be very difficult. Despite this, he still came up with something to talk about, asked about his assistant, whether she treated her well, to which the girl replied that she was quiet, and even chose this wonderful dress for her. After that, he decided to tell more about her. For example, that Arya had been running the palace for many years. Her son, who died last year, was also a soldier, and both mother and son served this kingdom. One can only assume that he was a serious man. Like her, everyone calls him a man of honor. Surprisingly, the meeting lasted a long time with everyone. They talked so quickly that the girl didn't even get tired. Meanwhile, the next day arrived. As expected, the assistant prepared a bath for her. Everything here is so beautiful that the lady still hasn't had time to take it all in. She has the feeling that she came here not to swim, but on some kind of excursion, because when you find yourself here for the first time, it is impossible to remain calm, as if nothing had happened. While the assistant was helping her wash her hair, she was simultaneously asking how the water temperature was, and then suddenly started telling her that she had a son who would only just reach adulthood. Layla didn't understand why they were talking about this, but she didn't say anything like that and just continued listening. She also says that he was the captain of the border guards and also his pride and joy. But last year, it was destroyed by soldiers from a neighboring state, which means that she is referring to her country. The lady just thought about this, and Ari grabbed her by the head and started to drown her, as if she wanted to take revenge for what her country did to her son. It happened so fast that the girl didn't have time to really react, and she also didn't get a breath and started choking. At that moment, when the woman continued to tell that the soldiers of her country destroyed her son and she would never forgive them for it, Layla, underwater, no longer heard it. She was almost out of air inside. She had already come to terms with the fact that this was the last day of her life here, and began to think, is this really all, and she will never return to her world again? And then she suddenly felt an indescribable energy that seemed to push her upward. But the assistant didn't expect this. The very second it happened, the king felt an unpleasant burning sensation inside his body, and then realized that it was a sign. The guy inexplicably felt that he needed to urgently head to Layla's room before it was too late. He burst into the place where the girl was lying unconscious on the surface of the water, and then some time passed. And now they are already lying in bed. She woke up first, after which she was surprised, because I thought that was all. And when she realized that they were lying in bed together and she was wearing almost nothing, she felt terribly awkward, because you never know what he could have seen while she was unconscious, and who put on her what she is wearing now. Then she realized that she had nothing on at all, although until the very end she was sure that she was at least wearing pajamas. After some time, he also woke up and looked at her as if she should thank him. Layla asks why he's here, and he says she had some kind of nightmare and she wouldn't let him go.
Does that mean everything that just happened was a dream?
The guy started telling how she grabbed his clothes and begged him to stay, while she was partially asleep, and she also looked very exhausted when she slept, as if she had seen something worse than which nothing could ever happen. It's strange for her that she doesn't remember any of this, to which he said that she lost consciousness in the bathroom. That is, the girl misunderstood him a little, everything was real, and she also had a terrible dream, which she doesn't remember. Now she became even more tense, because if that was the case, it would be a good idea to tell him what the assistant had allowed herself to do. If she, of course, remembered all of this, which was very unlikely. Layla had already begun to imagine how he dragged her into the room, despite the fact that she had no clothes on, and her whole face turned red from these thoughts. He understands this, so he immediately asked her not to worry, because then he immediately covered her with a towel and did not look at anything. And he also said that the Arya and the maid of honor behaved very strangely, which means that the gentleman still didn't understand anything. They just started talking about that woman. She immediately knocked on the door, and Layla still hasn't decided what to do after all this. She started crying and felt like if she said anything, it would only get worse. When the girl began to look warily at her assistant, the king saw everything and thought that something was wrong. Layla doesn't even look at her at this moment, so as not to remember once again what she felt last night. She is disgusted even to be in the same room with this person, not to mention talking to her or even saying hello. The assistant only offered her a glass of water, but she couldn't take it because her hands were shaking and she let go of it. After this, the guy finally understood everything. He became very tense and now intends to find out what is going on between them. After all, the lady said that everything was fine. Even when the assistant was still in the room, he asked her to tell the whole truth, although in her presence, Leela would hardly say anything. At that moment, another assistant suddenly arrived. He apologized for interrupting, but he urgently needed to report something. He came to tell that the head maid tried to drown the guests just last night. All this according to the testimony of other maids. The guy couldn't believe his eyes, because the woman was standing in front of him as if nothing had happened, and his ears, because he didn't expect to hear this. It seemed to him that everything here was under his control, and no one was capable of such a thing. But that's how it happens. At first, the gentleman asked her personally whether it was true or not. The woman did not even try to answer anything. That is, she did not deny anything. The king told how he had a bad feeling, after which he went to the bathroom, and also understood that it was probably revenge for his son, because there could be no other reason. Since the assistant had already fulfilled her duty, she was satisfied and was now ready to accept any punishment that the master considered fair. And also because she initially did not confess anything to him and did not intend to, she asks for proper punishment. Without mercy, the guy, without thinking, asked the assistant to make sure that she was deprived of both wrists, and Layla at that moment looks at him, as if hoping that he will now say that this is a joke and he is not that cruel. Personally, she thinks there is no need for such a harsh punishment, although if you think about it, she almost died, and now seriously thinks that it would be cruel to treat her assistant like that. The king only said that for such a crime it would be fair, and considering her many years of service, so be it, he would spare her life. But if this happened a second time, he would no longer be so kind, and she would bear doubly responsibility. The girl is not going to agree with this decision. She intends to soften the punishment, and explains this by the fact that Arya took care of her with all the kindness, and she is personally sure that the woman served, suppressing her pain in complete solitude. And this act of hers was like a breath of fresh air, simply necessary. It can be described as if this moment simply became a trigger for her and her hatred burst out uncontrollably. To which the guy asked how she could say such a thing, because if it weren't for him, she probably wouldn't be alive anymore. Layla says that even if that were the case, It was only after a long journey that she realized how much pain and sadness she carried within herself, and what it means to live with the burden of grief and pain inside for so many years. In this situation, the girl understands her like no one else, so she asks the king to think about his decision again and not to be so cruel to a man who simply had no choice, so he did this. It's some kind of instinct that cannot be controlled. In the end, they decided that it would be better to simply expel her from the country, although he still thinks that the first punishment should have been left, but only for the sake of the lady, he did not do this. After all, she also has the right to decide what to do with that woman. And now, from this moment on, his personal servants will take care of her, and if he has time, he will try to control that they also do not allow themselves to go too far. Then he left with his assistants, asked the woman to pack her things, and asked the girl to take a bath, because after such a hard evening, this is just what she needed. This time her, or in the royal bath, because it is much safer here, and she doesn't mind, because it is even more beautiful here. Last time Layla thought that nothing could be more beautiful than a bathroom, but it turns out that it absolutely can. For some time she was resting quietly, thinking about her own things, trying to relax, and then suddenly a sound appeared, and she realized that she was no longer alone here, and besides the king himself, no one could have appeared here to warn her. She just turned her head to the side and made sure that she understood everything correctly. But this does not make it any easier. She started apologizing to him, and he said that everything was fine, especially since he should be the one apologizing. For some reason he thought that there was no one there, although it doesn't sound very convincing. The girl is trying to cover herself. They hid behind a huge column, only on different sides, so that no one would look at each other. Meanwhile, he says that 2 days have passed since she fainted, and he would like to know whether she has gotten better or not. The lady thanked him for his concern and said that she is already much better. And then she asked what about Arya, and he thinks that she had already left the palace this morning. She was sent into exile, but now she works in the house of a foreigner, his friend. While she was thinking about how kind he was and how he knew how to listen to the opinions of others, the king hinted that it was time for her to leave this country too. She asks what this means, and he explains that there is a lot of hostility between their kingdom and the kingdom of the White Fran, that she may face danger if she stays here for a long time, so it is better to return to her homeland and quickly. She was ready for this, but something is stopping her. In principle, she is doing well here. She just needs to think about how to do better. Some time passed. The king returned to his office, because there is never enough work, and this time they talked with the assistant about it. Has the gentleman finally decided to send the girl back to her homeland, to which he says that he plans to transfer her through their unofficial diplomatic route so that she arrives safely? The assistant tries to hint that she is, after all, the king's bride and could be used as a pawn during negotiations. The king says that they should not aggravate the hatred and resentment even more, so there is no point in even talking about it and wasting time on it. And then a man in a cloak appears. He appeared out of nowhere and asks if the king doesn't think it's a bit hasty, and it's better to keep the girl longer than to regret later that it won't be possible to get her back. He speaks about it so calmly, as if he was asked about it, and also, judging by the gentleman's reaction, he is inclined to listen to this person's opinion, who very persistently advises that it is better not to send this girl back to the kingdom of the White Fran until it is clear that they no longer need anything from her. After that, he explained that he meant that the security system was too weak and that they needed to seriously rethink everything. At this rate, their treasures will be stolen in an instant, and he regrets that he is the only one who thought about it. Glenn is already standing in front of him with his sword in bewilderment, and he is now interested in only one thing. Who is he to give unsolicited advice, especially in the king's office, who didn't even summon him? The boy immediately made it clear that he would not be frightened, after which the king asked if this man had really come to them from the royal family of the White Frank. He says he's pleased they understood it right away, because in a way he's a very respected man in White Frank, no matter how arrogant it may sound. The gentleman asks what brought such an important person to this country without an invitation, because everyone knows that it is not customary to act like that, and some people are severely punished for their particular impudence. The guy explained that, as he had already said, he came to warn them so that in the end they would not regret it and thank him for his help. The assistant said that it seemed like their uninvited guest didn't understand what he was saying and was ready to deal with him. The king asked him to calm down because he thinks that everything can be resolved without swords, and in the meantime he asks why they should listen to him, because she is the king's bride, and they cannot just detain her because someone asked them to do so. The guy laughed a little when they called her a bride, but the king still doesn't understand why he reacts this way. He didn't say anything like that. And then a phrase was said that at first seemed like a joke. Actually, it sounds like this. What if the king you are all talking about is not real? According to him, the current king is no different from a puppet. A certain person whom hardly anyone can suspect of this. All the white franc is in this man's hands, and he's desperately looking for Layla. But this already sounds very interesting, and now they have something to discuss. The guy also said that the man was probably trying to make her his property under the pretext that he was going to marry her off to the king. But because of those who made her path difficult and took her with them, that guy's plan failed. Out of spite, he destroyed all of Mrs. adoptive parents and made her younger sister a toy for his subordinates. No matter how terrible it sounds. And now he has a question for them. Is it normal to send such a defenseless girl into the hands of such a dangerous man? He also said that, in any case, it was not his decision to make, but he was very glad to have the honor of guiding them on the right path. And he also warned that if they tried to find out the story about the adoptive parents and sister, they would understand that everything he had just said was the pure truth. There came a point after which he could no longer stay there. The guy wished them all the best and asked them to remember that the wrong decision could create a lot of problems. And he also hinted that they would soon be able to meet again, with such a smile, as if he really wanted it. At that moment, many assistants burst into the office. There was some kind of chaos around, and the king at that moment wondered what the real reason was why a person from the royal family of the White Frank was risking his life just to give a warning. This was some kind of madness. The guy wondered if he should believe his words, because so far, everything sounded very convincing. The next day came. Layla had already gotten used to this mansion, and even found something to do. She likes to create flower arrangements and place them throughout the house. And butterflies are constantly flying around her. She perceives this as if her creation is so beautiful that even butterflies flock to look at it. The king asked his assistant to come to him as soon as possible to find out if he had found out anything about yesterday's. Glenn reports that according to a secret spy currently in the kingdom of White Fran, it is true that her adoptive parents have died and her sister is reported missing. The gentleman is already confused about what to do. That girl, even if she is a guest, is not safe inside the palace, and this contradicts what he promised her. And then the assistant says that he seems to have an idea, or rather, a way to keep her safe in the palace. Just in case, he said this in his ear, so that if someone was eavesdropping on them, those people wouldn't hear anything. At first, the king was a little indignant, but then he thought that he didn't even have an alternative, so he could think about it. After some time, he gathered everyone in a huge hall, probably wanting to communicate something or give an order, or maybe both. No one understands why it all happened so suddenly. They were not warned about anything, and someone else called it outrageous even for a person from the royal family. The girl also thought about it. She wondered what happened to His Majesty. He called the entire royal family and nobles so early in the morning. This hasn't happened for a long time. His Majesty began by thanking everyone who had come and agreed to be present. Although, in reality, no one had a choice. He said this only out of politeness, and also admitted that he wanted to announce something very important. After that, he extended his hand, looked straight towards Layla, and made it clear that what he wanted to say now was directly related to her. He asked her to come closer, and everyone else became quiet, as if they already understood what was waiting for them all now. The girl is very scared. She has no idea whether to be happy or afraid, because she can expect anything from him. Then some rumors started to appear in the hall. Someone started to guess what was going on here, although it's unlikely that anyone could guess what would actually happen. Here she is, standing in front of the king. Her legs are shaking, but it couldn't be any other way after all. What is happening now doesn't happen every day. Then he suddenly pressed her to himself, grabbed her tighter so that she wouldn't run away, and only after that he turned his gaze to everyone else. Layla felt terribly awkward, but if he had warned her and she had known in advance what to expect, it would have been easier. Finally, the guy says that the reason they are gathered here is that from today on, he would like to see Lady Layla as his beloved wife. But usually, girls are asked in advance whether they agree to this or not. But this time, he just created an awkward situation for her. It's impossible to imagine what she's feeling right now. The lady probably doesn't fully understand what's happening, and won't understand it very soon. Despite the fact that people began to be indignant, they called this act impudence, and even a mistake that could not be corrected. The guy didn't react to it at all because he didn't care at all what others thought about it. He just had to report it, and everything else didn't matter anymore. People just have to accept the fact that it's going to happen. I just wonder if he cares what Layla thinks about it. And it's also unclear whether she even has the right to choose, because it looks like, as usual, she doesn't have anything like that. It's surprising that no one is afraid to speak their true opinion. People probably know that the king simply doesn't care. Otherwise, they wouldn't have such freedom in this regard, but it's still unusual for the girl that they so boldly say what they think. Meanwhile, the king takes his lady in his arms, carries her to another room to be alone, and probably wants to know what she will say to him about this. Although after this, he probably should explain everything and make sure that she doesn't get too upset that he didn't leave her a choice. She asks him to stop because she doesn't understand where he's taking her, and for some reason he initially ignored her. And then he asked, "Isn't it obvious where the beloved wife will go? Of course, it's the bedroom." Her face at that moment turned so red, it became the same shade as her hair, exactly the same. As they walked into the room, the same assistant who had advised the gentleman of this idea was watching them from the side. He was smiling and very happy that everything had turned out this way. Now the guy is already putting her on the bed. She is afraid to even move, and also that he will again not ask whether she wants it or not, and will start taking off her clothes. Layla doesn't even look him in the eyes, although he asked her several times to relax and not think that he decided to take advantage of her. She still can't believe that, if nothing stops him, the king will make her his wife. Although, if you remember whose wife she could have become, then it would probably be even better. He at least respects her and doesn't perceive her as another toy. When they were already together on the bed today, he started a conversation about her adoptive parents, who were disposed of by order of the King of White France. He said that he found out a little information about her and eventually made a decision to do the best thing, to protect her life by getting married. So far, he has no other option but to make her happy and not hand her over to those who will abuse her. He didn't even really ask whether she agreed with this decision or not. Only one thing was important to him, her safety. Naturally, she couldn't help but thank him. It was a very brave act on his part. And the girl also said that if he thinks she's holding it against him, it's not so. On the contrary, she appreciates everything he does for her because this has never happened before, even in less significant situations. Here she is, already sleeping on the bed, digesting everything that happened, but what surprised her most was the words that she is his beloved wife. Because literally, this morning, she could not even guess that everything would turn out like this. She really wants to rest, but her eyes won't close. Life is so unpredictable right now that she just wants to know what will happen next and have fewer surprises. Although everything turned out pretty well, there are even fewer disadvantages than all the good things she agreed to, but she doesn't understand it yet. Meanwhile, all those who were on break gathered in a small group and began to discuss the fact that the king apparently had taken a mistress. Everyone already knew this, even that she was from a white French family. The people don't see anything good in this. For everyone, this girl is a person from an enemy state, towards which they will never be able to treat normally or even neutrally. Meanwhile, these three ladies also can't live without gossip. They discuss everything they've heard and even add to the non-existent just to make it more interesting. They are sure that in a couple of hours, the entire state will know about all of this, because such news cannot be kept from spreading, and the majority also believes that His Majesty has unusual taste, which means that they also do not approve of a saint, especially as his wife. After some time, the culprit of all this gossip joined them. Layla, as she knew, came just in time when they had time to discuss all the main things. They began to greet her with the words that everyone was waiting for her, asked her to sit down, and even said that it was an honor for them to see her at this tea party. Naturally, the lady thanked them for this, but she still felt a little uncomfortable. She felt on an energetic level that something was wrong here. In the end, she spent time with them more or less normally, and even managed not to quarrel, and a couple of hours later, she was invited, one could probably say, by her future husband. The guy kept an eye on her, saw that she had eaten almost nothing, and, just in case, asked how she was feeling. This time, the girl didn't remain silent. She was of course embarrassed, but she still admitted that today. She heard the rumors that had spread throughout the city today. After these words, he immediately understood what they were talking about, and said that she might not continue. The king asked her not to worry about it at all, and he himself thought that now it was clear what was worrying her so much. Before, it was clear that she was lonely here without family and friends. but now he would think about it more seriously. If only he knew how he could help her. He remained silent all evening because he was thinking about how to improve her mood, at least for a while, or make her smile because this was not good. It was already very late. They said goodbye, and Layla, with a huge heaviness in her soul, went to the room. Although she understands that this will not make her feel any better, she thought that she would come in now and immediately lie down on the bed to fall asleep. But this time, everything would be a little different. Her future husband made sure that at least today, at the end of the day, Layla would feel and see that someone cares about her. She just opened the door and immediately felt the indescribable smell of roses, of which there are so many that you could create a whole garden out of them. They are literally on every corner here. There is an incredible amount of them, and another very important point is her favorite flowers. The girl hadn't felt what she felt at that moment for a very long time. All the bad thoughts and worries that had been suffocating her for so long had disappeared. Apparently, these crimson flowers are exactly what she was missing. They are beautiful, and now it will be much more pleasant to fall asleep. And there was also a letter on the table, which she immediately began to open, because she understood that it was intended specifically for her. I laid out these flowers, as beautiful as your hair. I hope it will comfort you a little, from Saeed. The lady somehow couldn't even imagine that His Majesty somehow knew what kind of flowers she liked. It even seemed to her that it was more of a coincidence than something meaningful. She put this letter to her body and very quietly said what a good and kind person he is. She will remember this act of his for a long time. Then the girl took a closer look and saw that there wasn't just one letter. There were two of them, and that was very interesting. But is it really from the same sender? That would be strange because everything could have been written in one. It turned out to be an invitation to a royal banquet hosted by the palace itself. But when the girl read it, her smile disappeared somewhere. Time passed. A large event was taking place in a huge hall. Several girls were dancing in the center, entertaining the guests. They are wearing national clothes, which highlight their figures well. They manage to attract people's attention from the first seconds. And this is not surprising. They are professional dancers, so it is impossible to take your eyes off their movements. It is something mesmerizing that you want to watch constantly without being distracted. They look straight at the king, and he at them. Only having a bride, it's strange that he paid attention to them at all, and for so long. Since the saint is also here, it means that she accepted the invitation and even managed to find a suitable outfit to match the celebration. Naturally, she is very embarrassed. She tries to cover herself up, although there is no point in this, because the lady looks simply magnificent, no matter what she is wearing. As soon as she appeared in front of everyone present, from the very first seconds, discussions began about how their clothes looked good on her for a foreigner, and someone even called her a monkey who was trying to copy someone. It's good that the king didn't hear this. Layla noticed these unfriendly glances almost immediately, although she tried not to look at anyone at all, so as not to attract unnecessary attention, and not to see how they were looking at her angrily, from all sides, wherever she looked. She heads towards her future husband, and checks in advance what mood he is in, just in case. He looks at her very mysteriously, apparently examining her figure more closely, because he has never seen her like this before. It was unusual for her that he didn't even approach her, but just sat silently and waited for her to come up to him. Meanwhile, the assistant looks at her with a smile, and also did not hide that she is especially beautiful today. Only then did the king agree with his words, but before that, he himself had not said anything. Apparently, he did not want to say anything unnecessary. After this, the assistant asked if the man would come today, to which the gentleman said that if nothing changed, he would. In the end, Layla changed her mind about going to the king. She felt too awkward to appear before him in this state. Although, if she had known that some ladies would stop her, she would have gone to him right away. Those same girls from the party greeted her with compliments, saying that the dress suited her very well. But they themselves were probably jealous that they hadn't found something like this. They also asked her if she had gotten used to life in this country, because they understand that some traditions and things may be different from those she is used to. She replied that she doesn't understand much yet, so she has to learn from books so that it will be easier later. The girl answered her that she understood her, and also that their traditions and teachings were gradually disappearing. And this conversation suddenly reminded her that she had something to tell her. After which she asked if the saint knew why they were the people who could no longer turn into dragons. Layla has no idea why this is, and she also thinks it will be uninteresting and will only waste her time. It seems that they, as luck would have it, have slowly come to the conclusion that the reason they lost this ability is because of the ancient war with the White Fran. And if they could still turn into dragons, they would crush such a country in no time. But saying this in front of the saint whose homeland it is was a little inappropriate. But everyone understands perfectly well why they did it. This conversation could not have gone any other way. The girl is already used to the fact that they all behave differently at the beginning, but in the end, they just want to insult her homeland, slowly approaching this topic, even if it is inappropriate. Right after that, a very pleasant melody started playing. Everyone started looking for a partner, because it's wrong to stand still when something like that is playing. These ladies immediately started looking for attractive guys with their eyes. They thought about it so quickly, because an ordinary dance means nothing, and strangers are very simply looking for a partner for a one-time meeting. Naturally, for some, this meeting will not be their last. Layla understands that she personally cannot find just anyone for herself, because the king will not approve of it. Although this is a tradition, in this case, it is better not to take risks and just stand aside so as not to make things worse. The atmosphere in the hall is very pleasant, but this is only at first glance, and only for those who don't care about the saint. She personally, and everyone else, find it unpleasant to be here for various reasons, and everyone is trying to pretend that everything is fine, just because of the king, to show that everything is okay. Layla watches all this and continues to cover herself because she still hasn't gotten used to such revealing clothes. At this moment, the guy doesn't even look in her direction, nor does he look at anyone else, as if he's seriously thinking about something. The assistant decided to rectify the situation. He hinted that perhaps His Majesty should invite someone to dance. After all, he had organized everything and should somehow participate in the event. Saeed remained silent, and then the manipulation began because things couldn't go on like this any longer. The assistant says that then he himself will dance with one of the ladies who seems the nicest to him, and also, at the end, hinted that the king would still have to dance with at least one girl, otherwise he would break tradition, and he would find that unforgivable. His Majesty replied in a very displeased voice that he understood everything, and another very interesting fact about him is that he doesn't like being rushed. The assistant is already talking to some lady, saying that his boss is such a bore that sometimes it's just unbearable to be with him. Meanwhile, the saint is still standing in the corner. She has already resigned herself to standing alone the whole evening, and then suddenly something happened. The king finally approached her, although there was nothing wrong with that. But she saw that he was forced to do it, and if it weren't for the assistant, he would still be sitting in his place and pretending not to notice her. He suggests dancing this dance together while the music is still going on, if she doesn't mind, of course. After such a proposal, she was very embarrassed, but not only because there were a lot of people here or something else. Layla forgot when she last danced. Moreover, she doesn't know the features of their traditional dance, and this is a big problem. It seems to her that if someone like her dances with His Majesty, she will only disgrace him for a very long time. After these words, he took her by the hand and wordlessly dragged her to the center of the room, so that she would understand that he absolutely didn't care about the opinions of others. Then on the way, he said that she underestimated his skills, so she shouldn't think about anything. Just relax and trust him. They are already in the center of the room. Everyone is looking at them. There is literally not a single person who is not looking at them right now. At some point, she really thought that since she was next to him, there was nothing to be afraid of. Now it was unlikely that anyone would say anything because he could hear it. She even liked it because the movements that everyone does are elementary, and some even improvise because it's not interesting to repeat the same thing every time. To make her feel more confident, he praised her almost immediately, and now she wants to understand whether he is sincere or not, because just recently he didn't even pay attention to her, or at least pretended that he did, and now he says such things. Of course, she was very pleased, especially since the girl had rarely heard such things before. He apparently knows how to appease her. On the one hand, this is very good, but on the other, not so much, because this way he can manipulate. Then they looked into each other's eyes in silence for a few minutes, and then he wanted to say something, and he did it quietly so that no one would overhear. His Majesty says that he doesn't know what kind of thing she's been through so far, but there's no need to be afraid anymore, because he's now responsible for her safety, and will be for a very long time, depending on how long they'll be together. He said that now no one would dare to humiliate her, insult her, or even pretend that she was unpleasant to anyone. She even shed a few tears, because it was incredibly nice to hear that someone was ready to stand up for her, especially to make her his wife. Layla started looking only at him, because now everything else is absolutely indifferent to her. She wants to spend this whole night with him. He begins to make her fall in love with him with every word, every movement and action, although she perceives it as much more beautiful and brighter than it actually is. Maybe even better. She really missed it. Everyone who is watching them from the side has even stopped dancing. They can literally tell by every movement, and look how strong the feelings are between them and how long this has been going on. Even the musicians look only at them, although it is usually important for them to see everyone's mood in order to change the subject in time. And then something happened, after which her heart began to ache. It was very unpleasant, but for now the saint is trying not to show it. He abruptly throws her hand away, turns around without explaining anything, and the lady also felt that when he turned around, he immediately smiled. It turns out that a second before that, he heard the voice of a girl that he couldn't ignore on an instinctive level. It seems like something interesting is about to begin. The girl says that she sees that they are having fun here, and also said that she has already begun to think that he has forgotten the face of his bride, hinting at herself. It sounded very strange. How could she say such a thing? And the fact that he reacts to her like that? All this does not bode well. With this action, he only put his real bride in an awkward position. She looks at these two and already imagines what rumors have started. And you can also see how confident this lady is. Apparently, she and the king have known each other for a long time. I wonder why she thinks she can call herself his bride. A whole night passed from that moment. The next day came, and from the very morning, that same girl was already on her knees in front of him. She asks to be allowed to greet him again, and also told him that she had just returned from her homeland yesterday. For some reason, the saint still doesn't understand anything, and even considers her beautiful, watching them from the side. The guy just lifted her head and dispensed with unnecessary formal words, which were necessary here because they were not strangers. After this, Layla should have already become tense, but she looks at them as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, the guest says that no matter what, it is always important to observe etiquette. Then she conveyed her mother's gratitude, after which he asked if she was better or not, which means that they are more familiar with each other than one could imagine. Since he knows her mother, it is quite possible that they could have developed a relationship. Something prevented this. It's not surprising, if all of this is on hold now. She thinks that everything will be. But he still hasn't said that nothing can happen between them, and everything is already in the past. The girl says that thanks to the nuts and fruits he sent, she was finally able to return to the royal palace. So she also wants to personally thank him for this. At that moment, Layla had a strange feeling that was impossible to describe in words. She was probably beginning to understand that since some girl had come to the king, and without any important business, it didn't mean anything good. Immediately after this, the king's assistant approached her, who is one of the few who treats her well, but she immediately reacted with fear and thoughts that it won't be easy with him either. Out of the blue, he starts telling her that His Majesty has always been alone, but the girl doesn't yet understand what he's getting at. After that, the guy started telling her that he can only relax with a few people, and if she's interested, he can tell her why. His Majesty has neither noble blood nor royal blood, and he is half aristocrat and half common man of the people. Those who came from the ancient lineage of the first black dragon are the current royal family, and His Majesty comes from another dragon lineage. He has mixed blood. Now it became clearer to her why he was so distant. For this, she was very grateful to her assistant. He literally opened her eyes to many things. It was also possible to find out that from an early age, he showed traits inherent in the first Black Dragon King and looked exactly like him, which could not go unnoticed. Thanks to the enormous support of the people, he easily became king. The guy also said that maybe that lady is a purebred noblewoman, but she doesn't have any royal blood in her. The people chose her as the king's bride because of her abilities, which means that the king and queen are not chosen by people who fall in love with each other. They are chosen based on the people's love for them. Now it's clear why they hated her so much, especially after he decided to make her his wife without their opinion. After that, he says that in any case, His Majesty bears a great burden. The only ones he can open up to are Lady Harisha, he, and the saint, and also a card to him that His Majesty has become more cheerful since she came to their kingdom. You can't argue with that. Before, he never went outside. But now, he at least started appearing among people, especially without any reason. This had never happened before, and now the king calls her with a shout, as if she had done something wrong. After that, she began to be afraid of him. You never know what he will do after that. After that, He begins to tell the guests that he brought this girl here. They are about the same age, and he hopes that they will get along. It's very interesting how he imagines this, because two candidates for the role of his wife are no longer a joke. Naturally, conversations began about how he could so easily show off his concubine right in front of the bride. And they also said that the girl looks unsightly when she stands in front of Lady Harisha. The lady, out of politeness, introduced herself, said her name, and began to look at the reaction of the so-called bride, if she can be called that, of course. She immediately realized that in front of her was the one from the white French that everyone was talking about. But it was unclear what she meant by that. One could only guess whether she was pleased to meet her or not. And so her life began, where she desperately tries not to catch the eye of Lady Harisha, at least as much as possible. For example, today she calmly went out into the street, hoping that she wouldn't meet anyone, and as luck would have it, at the same time Harisha came out into the street. If they didn't come up with something, they would definitely collide and nothing good would come of it. So she had to act very quickly, faster than she realized. I had no choice but to jump into the bushes. It was better than meeting her gaze and then hearing that she was supposedly chasing her competitor. That would have been fine, but now the main thing was to remain unnoticed. At the moment, the girl feels like a thorn in the side of His Majesty's bride. There's no other way to describe it. She even wanted not to disturb them, to go back, if only everyone would be happy and would not consider her here superfluous, or the one who causes everyone problems. While she was sitting hidden and reading a book, Harisha suddenly came to her, but she looked around as if she was looking for her. Does she really want to talk about something? Although the saint has a premonition that if they talk, it won't end well. Layla hid around the corner on purpose to make things better, because the less likely they were to cross paths, the better it would be for everyone. It would be very bad if it turns out that the girl is looking for it on purpose, and not just came here to remember where everything is. Time passed. She managed to make sure that they did not cross paths, and at some point the assistant, before leaving, she says she heard that Lady Harisha wants to talk to her over tea tomorrow, and doesn't know how to say it. The thoughts that came into her head at that moment sounded like, what should I do? What did I do wrong? The next day had already arrived. The girl had been thinking about it all night and couldn't think of anything to refuse without ruining the relationship. She had to come to tea. She entered the room and immediately heard indignation, as if it was impolite of her not to even greet her first. I didn't expect Layla to be so straightforward and not afraid to say what she thinks. Although at the first conversation, it's too much. So she didn't make the best impression of herself. The meeting had already started off badly, and it was unlikely that anything would change. The girl was even afraid to approach the table, wondering what she might do wrong, and the guest would immediately notice. And that could happen. If one might think that nothing serious would happen, then in reality it was the other way around. Only Harisha was convinced that they were alone here, and no one would hear them. She immediately showed her true colors, and began to swing with such force as if she was defending herself from some villain that she didn't feel sorry for. Layla didn't really have time to react. Not only didn't she notice, she also didn't think that this person was capable of such a thing. At the very last moment, the girl says that it's a joke. She takes her hand away, and the saint already seemed to feel it there. She felt so bad that she couldn't even come to her senses and understand that nothing like that had happened. Meanwhile, Harisha says that she had been waiting for someone like Layla all this time, and after that, she asked him to tell her about the outside world and the other side from which she had come to them. After some time, the girl apologizes to her for being too unpredictable, explained the matter, that she was a little worried. The saint tells her that everything is fine because the main thing is that nothing bad happened, and everything else is not so important. The girl also asked to stop calling her lady because it was too formal, especially since she always liked it when people addressed her by her first name. So far, in all the time they've been communicating, they haven't managed to find out what kind of person she is. But at the very least, calling herself the king's bride and knowing that he brought some girl into the kingdom, she can't treat the saint normally. It's impossible. Layla is trying to defend her position because she believes that she is not supposed to simply address the future queen by her first name, as she asks. The girl says that, in fact, she is not a queen yet. Besides, Harisha also called the saint the beloved wife of the king and a person whose status is higher than hers. But this is already very strange. How did she even come to terms with this and, moreover, said it out loud? Layla didn't expect this from her. Now she's completely confused. Because on the one hand, Karina accepts the fact that the saint is the king's future wife, but on the other hand, How could she then call herself his bride? All of this is very complicated and unclear. But sooner or later, the girl will figure it out, because this can't go on for long. And here the most interesting part begins. Harisha finally suggests to drop all formalities between them, because she wants to become friends and chat about all sorts of nonsense, and also asked if she can call her just by her first name. They agreed on this very quickly, although the saint is still sure that sometimes she will forget about it. Meanwhile, while the guest is enjoying the taste of the dessert, Layla can't stop thinking about where this is all heading, because there is definitely some kind of catch in all of this, and everything can't be so smooth and calm. She is almost sure of it. It's in my head how someone can call themselves a bride, but not deny that the king may have someone else. After that, they started talking about the royal palace of the White Franc. Harisha had always heard that it was very beautiful there and wanted to know if it was really so. Leela said that she hadn't seen it herself, but she had no doubt that everything was so. Suddenly, the girl says that she always dreamed of chatting like this with someone about places she hadn't seen. And as for the royal palace, she sincerely dreams of visiting there, to which she said that in her opinion, this palace is no less beautiful than any other. Harisha thinks that this may be true, but wants to ask the question, isn't life in a golden cage dreary? The lady didn't quite understand what she meant, so she asked for a more detailed explanation. The girl started by saying that since childhood, she had been madly in love with reading adventure stories and could spend several days in a row on them. She had a dream to travel as soon as she had the opportunity, because before, due to her age, she was not allowed to go anywhere alone, especially for a long time. At some point, she was chosen as Saeed's bride. Although before that, the girl imagined her future a little differently. It's not that she's outraged, but no one is better suited to be king than him, and she wants to support Saeed as his queen. Layla realized that she truly cares about His Majesty. She constantly thinks about it and tries to do everything she can, just to make it easier for him. The only downside to all of this for her is that as soon as she becomes queen, she will lose the freedom she dreamed of throughout her childhood. And now she can't decide which path to take, and is afraid of making a mistake that will be impossible to correct later. It was a very frank conversation, after which I got to know the girl from a different perspective and understood what was going on. Right after that, Layla also began to admit that she doesn't know what she wants to do at all, although there are many things that she doesn't want to do, which is why she thinks that people who have a dream are amazing. The girl also admitted that her life had always been empty, so someone like Harisha shines in her eyes very brightly. After listening to all this, the girl thought, why not find a dream together? Especially since they have a lot of time for this, which needs to be used wisely. So they agreed to become friends and shook hands, although at first it was impossible to think that everything would end like this. Meanwhile, the award ceremony of the Kingdom of Dralius began. A lot of people gathered, basically as usual, the Garg family to him, but he said his name so loudly it was as if he was shouting at him. The assistant came up very quickly. He didn't like the way he was addressed a little, but that's not as important as why the king did it. He wants to give him something very valuable. In recognition of his achievements on the battlefield, the king wants to award the guy with the Dragon King medal, and for him, it is a great honor. Everyone started to be very happy about this event. Everyone had smiles, and it is not surprising, because those who are given such medals really deserve it and have done a lot to be in this place. While Harisha is standing next to him, she is being complimented, admired, and even told that she is more suitable for him than someone else, specifically to hurt Layla's feelings. Even Layla herself doesn't deny that they are perfect for each other and look like a perfect couple. She's admiring the way they look together right now, but she has some mixed feelings that can't be explained. Meanwhile, evening came, the girl thought. Why sit in one place? She can do something nice for the king, for example, treat him to lemonade, especially since he's busy and can't go anywhere even for a couple of minutes. And she'll probably make him very happy with this. She's sure he won't mind seeing her. The girl entered his office very politely, in a sweet voice asked if he wanted a soft drink, hoping that he would at least smile now. Instead of smiling or thanking her for her attention, he asked why she was acting like a servant. She was a guest here and shouldn't please anyone, especially since they had agreed on this on the very first day. I had to explain that she simply had nothing better to do, so she decided why not do a good deed so as not to sit still. Moreover, she wants to help His Majesty at least a little, because she sees that he is constantly busy with something and nothing makes him happy anymore. And after that, he asked only one thing, what suddenly came over her. After this, Layla silently put the tray on the table and thought about what she could answer him so that he would understand that she was upset. The lady says that when His Majesty and Madame Harisha get married, she will have only one request for them: to allow her to work in the palace because she has nowhere else to go. But he probably didn't expect to hear this from her. He smirked slightly and then made it clear that she didn't need to worry about it, and then added, "The girl believes that even if it's just a lie, living here as a mistress when there's a real wife is painful, and he tells her that being a concubine is just a formality. She has the freedom to do as she wants. The main thing is not to regret her decision later. Even if so, she still wants to be useful to His Majesty, like Madame Harisha and everyone else." He didn't think that they would have such a conversation and that she even had such thoughts. But since that was the case, she was the one who started it. He even stood up to tell her something, because he sees that she only has her own opinion and is unlikely to listen to him. The king asked to look him straight in the eyes and said that she was already helping him enough, and he still wanted to ask, before that, how did she come to this country? Could she express her feelings as freely as she does now? Then another question came in. Could she smile at the flowers in her garden, or enjoy the dances she hadn't even planned that morning? She couldn't really answer him anything, and he says that he doesn't know why, but when he sees her becoming herself, his soul immediately feels warm. After this, he decided to give her some advice, namely, that it was better not to rush. It was better not to rush now and find a place for herself in this queen, especially since she herself should understand that here she has many more opportunities than anywhere else. The lady thinks that she does not deserve such generous words. When she hears this, she thinks that it is too much and that it is not about her. After some time, the saint and Harisha met for dinner to discuss the Dragon King festival, which takes place annually in this country. Saeed's swordsmanship is truly worth watching. And at the last ceremony, they use a special stone called the Black Dragon Stone. The girl hints that they can get it together, if there is a desire, of course. She heard that there are such in her homeland, and very persistently makes it clear that they need to go there. She says that of course we can send someone for these stones, but it would be much more interesting. Go there on a trip together, and if you go on horseback, you can get there in just 2 days. Layla says that she would of course like to go there, and this phrase was heard so that Harisha decided that everything was decided. She says that she can already imagine how interesting it will be, and that they will never forget this trip. Layla thinks that a girl is always fearless, but she talks about it like a little girl who persuades her parents to go on a trip, and it's very cute. So they've already come out to the horses, chosen the right ones for themselves, and Harisha is giving a short briefing, because without this, there's no way. She was warned in advance that if there is fear, the horse immediately senses it and begins to behave aggressively. Even if you manage to calm down later, the horse still remembers everything and doesn't distinguish whether something has changed or not. The first emotions are very important. Even if it seems that it is not so serious, the girl apologized to the horse in advance for being such a bad rider, and also asked her to help and not get too angry if she did something wrong. Dasha doesn't quite understand how it all works, but she still agreed to go on the road, and in the meantime the king approached them, surprised that they decided to leave so early, without even having time to have breakfast. He says that they, as 2 women traveling alone without an escort, can cause trouble that he will have to clean up later. The guy asked how confident they were in themselves, which sounded like a hint that they should change their minds before it was too late. Harisha answered for both of them. She felt like someone was being overprotective of Layla, especially since she was familiar with this path and they were already in a hurry, so there was no way to undo anything. She wished him a good day and asked Layla not to lag behind, because the faster they drove, the sooner they would arrive at their destination. Then the saint said goodbye to him. They made it clear that he would not stop them, even if he tried hard. He just looked at them, wished them all the best, and now all that remains is to hope that everything will be all right with them, and that his bride has no bad intentions. He has a bad feeling about this, but he's always been a suspicious person, so he'll calm down quickly and everything will be fine. Harisha enjoys this trip and sometimes asks how the girl feels, because they are not riding at the same level and she hardly sees her. It was already evening outside, and the horses were having a hard time moving, so they stopped at some house that at first seemed dubious. Layla is trying not to show that something is bothering her. She didn't plan on staying here overnight, but it looks like she'll have to, because they both already changed into their pajamas, which means they're definitely staying here for at least a couple of hours, at the very least. It turns out this isn't quite an ordinary house. It's a hotel where people who pass by at night sometimes stay. The girl asks if the saint is surprised by anything, to which Layla replies that, after all, Harisha is from the royal family, so it was strange that they stopped here. To which she replied that an inn should only have food and a place to sleep, as all the writers she had read had said. After such a conversation, she had a completely logical question. Is the saint really against staying here? And at that moment, I started thinking about how to properly explain that she didn't mean it that way. Quite the opposite. The bed here was much more comfortable than the one she slept on in the Count's house, so she said that, no, she would be quite comfortable here. And then Harisha says that the saint is exactly the same as she imagined her before their first meeting. The kings and nobles simply don't understand her. They always tell her that she shouldn't behave this way or that. They remind her of some dignity of a royal bride, and come up with various rules for her that only complicate her life. She even wondered if maybe she really should start thinking about makeup, dresses, and love like other women, even though her own values and interests were a bit different. At this point, Layla became interested in finding out if the king had the same opinion as all the other people who were telling her this. The girl didn't expect the saint to be interested in this, and at first she was a little confused. But then she smiled sweetly. She explained that Saeed is different. He sees her as she really is, and believes that rules cannot change people. They should be created only to make life better, and not the other way around. Layla says that she understands, and at that moment, she has a look as if she cares about it, and in this way she is probing the king's personality. Suddenly, Harisha wanted to talk about the fact that the girl was also the daughter of a nobleman, like her, and then asked if Layla shouldn't hate traveling without an escort and staying in a hotel like this. The girl thought that everything would be fine if she talked about it and tried to be sincere, at least for now. Taking a deep breath, Layla began by saying that despite being the Count's daughter, she was an adopted child in the family and made it clear that she usually didn't discuss this with anyone. She also said that she couldn't call her adoptive parents family. They were cold to her. She lived in the attic and everyone treated her like a servant. Calling someone mom or dad in such conditions is the same as not respecting yourself. So, being here, the main thing for her is who she is with, and not what conditions she is in, especially since it's not that bad here. At least it's warm and cozy. Right after this, Harisha wanted to feel sorry for her friend. She asked her to remember that she had her, but the girl didn't expect this from her. They talked a little more about everything, and then remembered that if they went to bed earlier, they could sleep more. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any strength for tomorrow, and they would need it. I have to go to the mine very early tomorrow, so every half hour of talking will result in a lack of energy. The next day came. It was just light outside, and they were already there. This place is impressive from the first seconds. According to Harisha, this is the best mining site in the country, producing precious stones that ladies love to wear at banquets. Just at that moment, when they were getting off their horses, a man approached them to greet them and ask how they could help. The girl asked to show where the black dragon stones were mined. Now all that was left was to hope that they would be allowed to go there, because perhaps some kind of permission was needed for this. The man is trying to say that they don't have to get them themselves. Some areas are already experiencing outbreaks of fever, so it could be dangerous. She told him that she understood everything, promised that she would be careful, and, just in case, gave him a few coins and diamonds so that they could continue on calmly and no one would interfere with them. Then she gave the same amount again, saying that it should go towards caring for the sick, because there were probably enough of them. Last night, before going to bed, Harisha told Layla something about the Black Dragon Stone. This is a gem that is said to have been guarded by the first Black Dragon King, the last ritual. The Dragon King requires a large fire, and to kindle this fire, the solar heat contained in the Black Dragon Stones is used. Here they are already in the mine. The girl already understands better what is what, and feels comfortable with her here, although initially she thought that this would not and could not happen. At first, they were full of enthusiasm. They were ready to stay here even for the whole day. But some time passed. It's dark outside. They're still here and there's still no result, no matter how hard they try. While Harisha didn't even want to stop, Layla looked at her and thought that this shouldn't be done. My friend's face is so pale that she might end up making things worse for herself with such activity, or at least losing consciousness. In the end, she agreed to rest, and when she stopped moving, she felt that she had indeed overexerted herself. She hadn't felt this way for a long time. That's why her body reacts this way, for it's real stress. Layla just turned her head to the side, saw an interesting stone, began to check it, and at that moment, she couldn't believe her eyes. She didn't really have time to understand anything, and didn't even tell her friend about it because some kind of earthquake started very suddenly. They were so scared that they thought they would never get out of here and were trapped forever, about to be pelted with stones. The ceiling started shaking so hard it felt like it was about to collapse right on top of them. They hadn't experienced anything worse in a long time. Huge chunks of rock began to fall from the walls, and if they hit them, the consequences would be serious. And it's also very hard to see around. Dust and sand have risen up, which gets into your eyes and other things. Layla managed to hug her friend so that she wouldn't be so scared, and then she realized that she didn't even notice how she did it. Everything happens somehow by itself. The girl sees that Harisha is more scared than her, so she starts to calm her down and call people for help, if anyone can hear them, of course. When everything had calmed down more or less, she asked how the girl was feeling, to which she replied that she wasn't feeling very well, most likely because she had inhaled a lot of dust. Where the entrance was, someone's voice was heard. Some person asked if everything was okay with them there, and it was also clear from the sounds that he was not alone there. This calmed them down a little, but there is no guarantee that someone will be able to lift those huge stones and save the girls before it gets dark outside. Layla asks them to hurry because one of them is sick, to which she was told that they need to wait a little. There were many injured people at other work sites, so they do not have enough people to remove the stone from the entrance. In any case, they will have to stay here for some time, and how long, no one knows. Harisha finally spoke up. She said that everything was fine and suggested that they calmly wait for them in the same place, because anyway, they had no other choice and would not have any. While everyone around is fussing and trying to do something, there is silence and darkness inside, which will only get darker with time. Layla, for her part, is trying to do everything she can because she understands that Harisha won't last long without her. She needs at least moral support. She constantly asks where their help is, but her face is already red, with beads of sweat dripping from it. Even a cold cloth doesn't help. She has a very high temperature, but it can't be a cold, it's something else. The main thing is that it's not serious. And then Layla remembers the words of the man who warned about the fever that hundreds of people have been getting sick with every day lately, especially in this area. And then something incredible happens. She stops hearing everything around her. Silence appears, and someone's voice is heard asking whether she gives up or not. This is the first time she's heard this, and he also tells her to free her, and this time with his own power. But she doesn't understand anything from this. After that, a girl with red hair appeared in front of her, who looked very similar to her. Layla did not have time to ask who she was. Then she started to wonder what she had in her hands. And what was going on here anyway? She was just with a friend and didn't call for anything or anyone. The voice appeared again, this time warning that the Harisha had almost crossed the line between the world of the living and the dead. So in order to protect the people dear to her, now is the time to use the power of healing. The power of healing. This is the power that the Scarlet Maiden possessed. This silhouette asks her to touch the soul of Harisha and save her before death becomes an irreversible process. The girl says that only Layla can do this. No one else is capable of it. But the lady still doesn't fully understand who she's talking to and why this someone is suddenly advising her something. She doesn't understand at all what's happening. For her, it's something incredible, and at the same time, a little frightening. Then she thought that there was no choice. She had to try to listen to her. After all, she had to fight for her friend's life. She would never let her die. The girl said out loud that she would definitely save her no matter what, and also concentrated all her strength within herself to use all her energy to the last drop. At some point, Layla finds herself in an incomprehensible space where there is darkness all around and the ground disappears under her feet. Then she saw her friend, only at a young age, when she was still a child and reading her favorite book. Layla feels like she's some kind of ghost here, watching someone from the side, although that's essentially how it is. At some point, other girls came running up, and they always say that Harisha is constantly reading her strange books and doesn't want to run with them. Perhaps the girl ended up in some of her friends' memories, but how this happened and why is still unclear. But just in case, she was trying to remember every moment so that she could use it later if the opportunity arises. Harisha begins to explain to her friends that they don't understand anything, and that these books aren't strange, and that if you read them, you can become smarter and learn something new, but they won't understand it. Then one of her friends said that it wouldn't be surprising if no one wanted to talk to her and she would be left alone. The girl responded by shouting that she wasn't alone and that she had friends. Even though she heard this all the time, it was still very offensive for her to hear it every time. What if someone who was sitting in the tree that he could join them if they didn't mind? This was Prince Syed in his youth. He was often on the street, unlike how his life turned out a little later. They all knew back then that he would be the next king, so they treated him with respect, and of course, weren't against him hanging out with them. He apparently decided to teach those girls a lesson, went down to Harisha, gave her a beautiful apple, and suggested they take a walk alone. The girl didn't know how to react to this, especially since she had never received such offers from respected people, whom she had previously been afraid to even look at once. After some time, they found themselves outside, began to admire the sunset, and at that moment she told him that he made a very nice gesture, and she appreciated it. Now she is not ashamed in front of her friends, although this is usually the case. He responded that they had a lot in common. For example, that they were both outcasts, although it was very strange for her to hear this. She did not understand how he could say such a thing, being the future king, to which he replied that, in fact, he was only half an aristocrat and half an ordinary man from the people, so one could say that even then she was higher in status than him. After his confession, she told him that even if that were the case, everyone was counting on him. He was very similar to the first Black Dragon King and was born under the same sign of the Black Dragon, so no one cared about any other details. She then gave him advice that if he worried less, life would become easier on the very first day. Suddenly after that, he said that they were also pinning their hopes on her, and when she asked who this person was, he said that it was him. She didn't expect to hear that from him, especially at that moment. It was both pleasant and very awkward. He then said that when she fulfills her dreams, she will become the greatest traveler of the kingdom, and asked her to show him the world after that. By that time, he will already be king. Even though he will be very doomed in this regard, he still dreams of visiting beautiful places with her, and does not hide the fact that he is very envious of her in this regard. He also showed her this precious stone called the Black Dragon Stone, and that was the first time she saw it. The guy also said that a long time ago, the first Black Dragon King used it as a protective amulet, and someone like her, traveling the world, should carry it with her. Then he suddenly threw this amulet into her hands, and she reacted as if it was a hot stone that would burn her hand. She was so surprised that she didn't even have time to catch it. The amulet started falling to the ground, and they were high up in the tree, and it was a very awkward moment, especially considering the value of that stone. She felt terribly uncomfortable because this could ruin everything, depending on how he reacted to it. One might have thought that the situation could still be corrected, but the amulet fell right into the water, which they didn't even notice. Because of the current, he could float away anywhere, and they wouldn't be able to find him. Harisha considered it her duty to find him as soon as possible and fix everything. Otherwise, she would never forgive herself. The guy quickly climbed down from the tree and started to stop her, calming her down by saying that nothing special had happened and that she didn't need to panic so much. But she was crying and couldn't stop. He turns her towards him and explains that her life is much more important, and no amulet can compare to that. The girl imagined that he would start explaining what she had done, get upset, and never approach her again. But that's how it turned out. In that case, he suggested that she find another Black Dragon Stone with her own hands, like a true traveler. Immediately after this, she was happy. She realized that she had to fulfill this challenge, and at the same time she would prove that for his sake she could do anything. It was such a wonderful moment that it can't be described in words. And Layla, watching all this, now understands that Harisha is not so bad. She recognized her as an adult, saw her when she was a child, and formed her final opinion. Then Layla moved forward sometime, when everyone had already grown up a bit, and it came to a serious relationship. They had a dilemma. Harisha either listens to her heart and fulfills her dream, or stays with him and will have to serve the people by becoming his wife. Meanwhile, the girl has already returned to reality. She has a lot of thoughts, but one thing is clear. She needs to help them somehow, and make sure everyone is happy. First, I need to help my friend, who can't even stand on her feet yet, let alone look for the black stone. Even though Layla will help her with this, she still needs to be restored to her condition, otherwise her body will be completely exhausted. A miracle happened. Someone removed the first stone and asked if everything was okay, because after so much time, some people had doubts about it. People promised to remove the stones right now. Everyone was freed, and all efforts will be directed only at them. And in the meantime, Layla shows what she found just at the moment the earthquake began. Words cannot describe how Harisha reacted to this. She can already imagine how happy Said will be. Layla says that she is giving this stone to her, and she must give it to the king, saying that she found it with her own hands. The girl doesn't understand where she gets so much kindness from. They've only known each other for a short time, but Layla is already helping so much. Perhaps after this, their friendship will become much stronger, and everything in life will also become better for each of them. The next day came. The girl was sitting at the same table with the king and didn't know what to talk about with him, because this time the atmosphere was not the most pleasant. He looks at her and says nothing, as if he is waiting for her to start telling him something, and with such a look, as if he knows that she has done something wrong. The girl couldn't resist asking him why he was so sad, and he asked about what happened a few days ago. It was important for him to know what happened during the trip, because the assistants were keeping something quiet and not telling the whole story. Harisha said that it was an unexpected earthquake. Then they were locked in, and Layla took care of her when she had a fever, after which he asked if they talked a lot. And is everything okay with her? Because it was probably hard for her to go through that whole situation and try to help her friend alone. He also admitted that he noticed that after they returned, her attitude towards him changed a lot. She became a little strange. He even tried to invite her for tea, but she refused, without thinking, as if she was offended by something. He thought that she was sick, so he called the doctor to check her condition. But even he said that everything was fine, so it was very important to find out the reason what happened to her. Harisha told him that she of course understands that he cares about Layla as a guest, but he is the king of this country, and it is strange that she refused the honorable invitation, hinting at herself, who never did such a thing. She hinted that this refusal could represent her feelings, although Layla never told her about her feelings for the king. This is already some kind of guesswork. And then she reminded him of her promise to return to him the black dragon stone that she had dropped long ago in childhood. She placed the stone on the table and spoke the very words she had been preparing all night. It's important to her that he understands her correctly, but it seems the king is not thinking about her right now and is giving preference to another lady. Meanwhile, the girl apologizes for making him wait so long. She didn't mean to, and promised that it would never happen again. Meanwhile, Layla is already getting ready for bed. Today was another very busy and difficult day. She really likes this time of day, because no one bothers her at night. The girl combs her beautiful long hair, and as usual, dreams of quickly feeling what it's like to be a happy and independent person. And she continues to receive invitations from His Majesty, but ignoring them becomes more and more painful each time. But she doesn't know what reason to come up with to decline these invitations. If only these two could be together soon, days like this, filled with darkness, would finally come to an end. Here, Layla is already lying in her bed. She is trying not to think about anything disturbing, although it is very difficult. Just as she was falling asleep, she began to have a dream, which she began to see almost immediately. At the same time, there is a feeling that everything is happening for real. A pleasant smell appears in the room, a light haze, and a feeling that at some point she is no longer alone here. Layla slowly opens her eyes, doing it very slowly, because she doesn't even think that it would be better if she did it sooner. She is lying in a very beautiful nightdress, and there is no blanket to cover her. When she saw that there was a man next to her, at first she didn't understand, and then he touched her, after which she immediately had a clear understanding of what he was doing here and why he had come. The guy clearly didn't get the room wrong. He knew where he was going, and meanwhile he holds her face and looks straight into her eyes. She panics and asks who he is, because she clearly understands that she wasn't expecting him, and that he, as well as no one else, shouldn't be here. He starts to allow himself too much, controls when she can move and when she can't. I also say that I've been waiting for this meeting for hundreds of years, which completely perplexed her. At first, he behaved more or less politely, and all his movements were soft. But now the guy allows himself to grab her by the hair, and not just like that, but to the point of pain. Layla is unable to resist. She can't even turn away, and he's already kissing her. He promises that this time they will definitely become one, and he will never allow anyone or anything to interfere with this. Not much time has passed, and she no longer thinks about saying anything to him because she is simply afraid of making him angry. He has such pressure, as if he sees that something is wrong, he can delete it. And when the girl realized that if he didn't intend to continue living together or dating her, if he had a child, she would be left alone with him. And this was already serious and was not at all part of her plans, especially at such a young age. She began to imagine the life she was afraid of, especially since he hadn't told her anything. There hadn't been a word about who they were to each other, Maybe he didn't like her at all, and he had decided to take revenge for something. Maybe even for some friend of his. He was definitely walking towards her with purpose. If only he knew how it would all end. Now she can't really relax. She doesn't want things to get to the most important point, because if there's an unloved person nearby with whom she's scared, it can be very painful and unpleasant. He clearly doesn't care about it. He doesn't even think about it, except perhaps for himself. When he was ready to move on, he didn't ask her anything. He started tearing her clothes. He didn't feel sorry for such beautiful and expensive fabric at all. And when he saw what was hidden underneath, he was even outraged that she hid such beauty from him and began to examine every millimeter of her body. She screams at him not to squeeze her so hard, and then he presses harder and smiles when he sees that she is uncomfortable. Then he said that as far as he could see, she liked everything, and he also asked her to trust him, as if he didn't understand that it works differently for girls. They can't feel comfortable without clothes in the presence of a person they see for the first time. Moreover, she understands that if she wants to refuse, she has no such opportunity. So it's strange that he's even asking her for something that's impossible. She had already started to think that he had confused her with someone else or something like that, because it doesn't happen that a man comes into a girl's room and does whatever he wants with her, especially if they don't know each other. He's either some kind of maniac, although there are no other options, and in the meantime he admitted that all this time while they were not seeing each other, he was afraid that she would be kidnapped and she would become the toy of some other man. Layla doesn't say anything to him anymore. She's just waiting for it to end, because it's impossible to stop him. And then he pulled her necklace. It started to dig into her neck terribly painfully, and this was too much. The guy asks her to tell him immediately if she has anyone else besides him. He will definitely get rid of these competitors. If he means His Majesty, things are bad. We need to come up with something and get out of it. Naturally, she didn't have time to say anything. And he, not even waiting a couple of minutes, already thinks that she is hiding something from him. In that case, he decided to ask her business about it because it wouldn't deceive him. But it was unclear how exactly he was going to do it. When he touched her again, it was the last straw for her. The lady ordered him to stop and not touch her. Right after that, something strange happened. A glow appeared that pushed him away from her. He began to look closely at what it was, because he felt a force similar to a strong wind. A moment later, they found themselves in different rooms. The girl was already dressed, but the memories remained, and she felt that everything was too realistic for a dream. It's as if she still feels all these touches, and also his presence, as if he hasn't gone anywhere. This has happened before, but this time it was different. Somehow special. She really wants to admit it to herself, but despite the fact that her heart was screaming no, her body wanted to continue. At some point, when she didn't expect it, she suddenly realized that this dream was her desire. A desire to see His Majesty, for him to touch her. Only for some reason, at that moment, he seemed unfamiliar to her. The girl got confused and completely lost track of her feelings, and this hurt her a lot. Meanwhile, the two are discussing how they still can't meet Lady Layla. One of them heard from a lady of the court that she hardly eats anything and lies in bed all day. Another one says that Layla was just checked by a doctor and there's no way she could be sick unless it's a physical illness. So they came to the conclusion that maybe something was weighing on her all this time, which is why she didn't want to go out anywhere. One tells the other that if he is so worried, he can go check on her. She will probably be pleased. The guy thought it was a very good idea. I'm sad now, and it wouldn't hurt to have someone's support, or just be there so she doesn't feel lonely. Now he understands why she didn't respond to his invitation. He is very interested in why she changed so suddenly and did this immediately after traveling with Harisha. He has no idea what's going on, but he's not going to just watch it. They definitely need to talk. The guy knocked on the door, and she thought it was someone asking for dinner, so she immediately said that she wasn't hungry and didn't want anyone to come in. After which he spoke and asked if she recognized his voice. Of course, the girl recognized him. She got worried because it was very late, and it was strange that he decided to come now. He says he heard she has no appetite lately and just asked for a little time to talk. He really wants to see her, make sure that everything is not as bad as he imagined, and go away to rest in peace. Suddenly, she hears someone bursting in behind the door and starting to wave swords. Naturally, she goes out to see what's going on. She starts to panic because she can't help him herself, and going there could be dangerous. That man apparently wanted to get into her room, but His Majesty prevented him, which means he felt he came without thinking. You could say he saved her, I don't even want to imagine how it could have ended if she had been alone and there was no one around. Layla runs up and asks what happened. She hasn't yet realized that she could be in danger, and he didn't try to scare her. He just answered that everything is fine. The less she knows, the better she will sleep, especially since she doesn't need to be nervous anymore. And besides, he's seen this man somewhere and is absolutely sure of it. Layla suggested that he go into the room and sit on the sofa because he had a wound that needed to be treated. Even though the security was in disarray, he still let his guard down and can't believe it. He already ordered Glenn to strengthen security, and today he plans to stay with her, in case someone else comes running here. He immediately warned her that she couldn't win because it was a security matter and he couldn't risk it, especially since she wasn't in a condition to defend herself and run away from someone. It was a huge relief to her that nothing serious had happened to them. The girl thanked him, but didn't even say anything about him staying with her. Suddenly, the guy admitted that although he would not forgive that villain, he was grateful to him for this wound, because she let him see her face, and now he's telling her there's a question she needs to answer. Namely, why did she avoid him all this time, and was afraid to show herself to him, because he was worried about her? She replied to him that she had recently heard that he and Lady Harisha were getting married, so she considered it wrong to make her jealous. She thinks that they shouldn't be together at such a late hour, because if someone sees them, there will be problems later. He says that he really appreciates her concern for him, but asked her to direct her sincerity to Lady Harisha. He's been tired of all she does talking about his fiancé for a long time now, and today, he didn't come here to talk about her. He wants to hear the lady tell him about her true feelings, but hearing this from a man who has a fiancé is a little strange. She wouldn't want her future groom to communicate with some girls like that. The guy doesn't hide the fact that right now he's worried about her, and about that spy earlier. And what about him? There's a chance that he was one of their ranks. Also, he is not even sure what their goal is. And to be objective, after everything that happened, he must personally patrol every day from today onwards to ensure that everything is quiet and calm. She doesn't know what to say to this. He has decided too much for himself. At least, at this moment, he should be next to his girlfriend. And so, from that day on, he came to her room every night. His Majesty did not miss a single time. Even when he had business, he still checked on her. Sometimes he even forbade her to leave the room alone. But at least this didn't happen often. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to stand it. At some point, this beautiful lady comes out of her room and asks where she can find Saeed, in case someone saw him, to which they answer that he was recently with Lady Layla, but they can't say exactly where he is now. After some time, she found him, and since she feels that there are some problems between them, she directly tells them not to rush to end their marriage, because she thinks that everything can still be fixed. She touched his hand very gently, hoping that he felt that he was not indifferent to her. In response, he only asked to give him a little time. But when it comes to relationships, everyone should clearly understand whether they need it or not. But he seems afraid to say that he hasn't felt anything for her for a long time, and is just stalling for time so that she doesn't get offended. Deep down, Harisha understands that he no longer treats her the same way he did when everything was great between them. After a while, she thought, why not go to Layla? Maybe she will tell her something that will help her finally decide and make up her mind for herself. First, she asked how Layla was feeling, because she hadn't seen her at any banquets lately. And then, suddenly, out of the blue, she starts giving a lot of compliments, as if she's trying to win you over, but it looks very artificial. The girl says that she has exactly the same opinion about her, but only so as not to remain silent, to which Harisha said that she admired her kindness and beauty, and also asked her to believe in herself. After that, they quickly said goodbye. Layla wanted to go back, but before going in, she heard someone talking and stayed outside the door to eavesdrop. Someone is discussing how His Majesty visits Lady Layla every night. Supposedly, he has no conscience, and they also discussed how those two probably share a bed every night. Also, that the dignity of the proud Lady Harisha is under threat, and all because of her fiancé's mistress, that is, Layla. The girl immediately remembered his last words, how he promised to visit her. There was no hint that he came to her for any other reasons. After the two had discussed everything important, Layla finally opened the door and went into her room, thinking to pretend as if she hadn't heard anything. But when she realized that if she closed her eyes to this, it would only get worse, Layla asked them to stay for a couple of seconds to say something. Namely, that she absolutely doesn't care about all the terrible things they say about her. It will be on their conscience. But if this happens again, they could lose their jobs. She will do this not because of any grievances of her own, but so that such lies are no longer spread. If they really want to gossip about someone, let them do it exclusively in relation to her, but under no circumstances should His Majesty or his bride be present there. And she also added that everything they discussed was not true, and it was up to them to choose whether to believe it or not. The two started apologizing. They were afraid that they might lose their jobs, but it didn't seem like they were truly ashamed. Meanwhile, the next day came, early morning, and His Majesty learned that Layla had suddenly disappeared. The assistant says that this morning, when she came to clean her, she was already gone. Harisha found out about this and started to get nervous, and for some reason, she also thought that she should blame her fiancé for this. She doesn't understand what's going on here, why it wasn't controlled because so many people are involved in this. He looked menacingly in her direction, and this is understandable. No one likes being accused without reason. It later turned out that the girl left a farewell letter, in which she wrote the following. Dear His Majesty, the King, I am deeply grateful to you for all the kindness you have shown me so far. Please forgive me for leaving without saying goodbye. For the first time in my life, I have found my dream, to build my life on my own. I no longer want to rely on the kindness of your Majesty. Even if my path is harsh, I will meet him face to face. For this, I must leave the royal palace, but I will never forget the joyful days spent with you. Please take care and give my best wishes to Harisha and Sir Glenn. Harisha almost burst into tears from these words. It was the most touching moment in recent times. Meanwhile, everyone started thinking about which direction she could have run in. Maybe it was not too late to catch up. The king began to ask if any gold, jewelry, or other valuables had been missing from the room, to which the servant replied that the lady had taken only one set of everyday clothes and nothing else. His Majesty is not happy about this. He thinks it is reckless on her part. She could have taken at least something, gold or silver. Harisha reminded him that he was actually the one who should know her best, and also that she was not the kind of person who would do such a thing even if it were offered to her. The assistant asks what they should do now. Should they assemble a search party or something like that? His Majesty understands that not much time has passed, and she is probably still in the capital. But is there any point in looking for her? That is the question. The girl left this place of her own free will. Perhaps her freedom shouldn't be contradicted. The assistant, just in case, clarified whether the gentleman was sure about this, and he asked not to make him repeat it twice. Harisha didn't really talk to anyone about it. She just thought to herself that the girl left without even saying goodbye to them personally. It was as if she was the only one who thought that they were friends, and for her, there was nothing worse than such sudden goodbyes. She decided to look for her on her own, wherever she was, without even telling anyone, and went outside, slightly covering her face. Several days have passed, and she has already managed to search countless streets in the capital, but she still has no clue where Layla might be. Apparently, she didn't stay at any of the hotels, and this complicates the search. It seems to her that the girl could have already left the capital several times during this time, and she is trying in vain to find her. Harisha came to the market. It's a very cheerful and joyful place. She's wanted to come here with her for a long time, but now it's unlikely to happen. Suddenly, a voice rang out, the one she had heard at the other end of the street and immediately recognized. Layla was asking someone what about firefly mushrooms. They were on sale today. It looks like she's standing here selling some goods, and she's clearly doing this because she needs money to move forward. Harisha could never imagine that her friend would do this. For her, everything seemed unreal. If things were that bad, she could have given her some money, but she didn't say anything, deciding to figure things out on her own and remain independent from anyone. There was so much work and customers that almost all the fruit baskets accidentally fell over, and if you spend a lot of time on this, someone might steal something unnoticed. The girl decided that she should help her, but now she needs to decide whether to hide or approach her as she is. Her colleagues came up to her. They helped her pack everything, and also said very nice words so that she wouldn't be too upset, and knew that there was no need to be upset about this. It happens to everyone. Naturally, the girl is very happy that she works with such nice people. But on the other hand, she wants to leave here as soon as possible, because working here on a permanent basis is not what interests her. Harisha looks at all this and remembers how they used to sit and talk about everything that concerns the future. Then Layla talked about how hard it was for her to figure out what she wanted to do. While there were many things she wouldn't want to do for any amount of money. Then, a friend suggested that we find her dream together. It would be faster and easier, and it would also be a useful pastime. Even though they agreed on this back then, they still didn't come up with anything like that. None of them still have any idea what they could do, what they would want to do even for free for the soul. Until this moment, the girl thought that her friend left the royal palace for her, but now there is a suspicion that this might not be the only reason. As the letter said, perhaps she took this opportunity to open a new path in her life. Harisha will always see that no matter how much distance there is between them, they will forever remain best friends. And now she decided that she must do what is required of her. I wonder what that could be. Meanwhile, the man and his assistant argue about the point of telling the white Fran about the girl's location if she herself is not here. The man couldn't hold back and threw his glass of wine right at the guy for talking too much. And he also added that the white Fran doesn't even answer them. And that's another problem. The guy replies to this that the letter is delivered in a roundabout way so that it won't be discovered. The border patrol is under the command of His Majesty Saeed, so it will take some time, but the letter is expected to be delivered to the king today or tomorrow. Meanwhile, near the border of the White Franc, things are also unsettled. All around, some kind of affairs are being decided, and no one is sitting still. These two don't notice someone on top of a huge fence and are talking about how they have almost arrived and that they can reach the capital of the White Franc by tomorrow morning, so as not to lose all their strength, which they don't have anyway. Meanwhile, the king had already received the information that interested him. He found out in which country his bride was and said that they would send a reply to this letter later, and he would also like to ask that his gratitude be conveyed to their lord. The guys said they understood everything, wished him a good day, and didn't expect anything. And the master decided to reward them for having come such a long way despite everything. He gave them a reward of a few coins, and they thanked him sincerely, because this was not usually the case. Now they are already returning back, walking along the corridor, looking at everything along the way and comparing this royal palace with the royal palace of their country, which in their opinion is not even close. And meanwhile, just when they had just turned away, the so-called king was transformed into who he really is. This is the guy who was watching them from above. He is glad that he managed to deceive them. He is very pleased to see how they mistook the border forest for the royal capital. His black magic hasn't lost its power yet, but it's still unclear why he does it. Since he has spent too much energy recently, now he needs to recover, and this will take some time. He had already returned to his room, but he couldn't help but think about his own business. He was worried about the fact that the White Fran still hadn't sent a single person, and he also can't use several of his abilities one after another. The guy thinks he has enough strength, but he doesn't. He really will have to wait. After some time, he even accepted the fact that he had overdone it lately and needed to at least truly relax tonight. Meanwhile, things are going much better in the market. Layla is doing so well that she even manages to help her colleagues. She's a little tired, but she feels a pleasant tiredness that hasn't gotten boring yet. She enjoys communicating with people so much that it flies by unnoticed. Sometimes she gets thoughts that maybe this is what she needs to do, but the very fact that it is not a prestigious business confuses her. For now, she's doing this because she has to, and then we'll see. She doesn't want to make a decision so quickly. Her colleagues are already thanking her. They know she won't be here long, so they often ask if she'll definitely come tomorrow. For her, this place feels so bright and warm that it cannot be described in words. She doesn't want to leave, but time does not stand still. She needs to think ahead. Staying here, she will have fun for a while, but then it will turn into a problem, and very quickly. Layla will remember for a long time how lucky she was to meet such people. Once she was walking along unfamiliar streets, which began to confuse her from the very beginning. She left the palace, got lost very quickly, and began to feel that this would not end well. She was trying to find some hotel and a job, if she was lucky. She was lost in her thoughts, and suddenly someone grabbed her by the clothes. She felt terribly disgusted and scared by this, and when she turned around, the girl saw two people she didn't know. They looked suspicious. They were interested in her silk dress. They identified the fabric by eye, and only because of this did not let her go further. They were ready to get her clothes by any means possible, to sell them and get a lot of money for it. These people surrounded her and started demanding that she take off her dress nicely, and she, of course, tried to run away. When she realized that she didn't have enough strength after a hard day, she began to call very loudly for someone to help, although she doubted that at such a time there could be anyone there at all. She was sure that everyone was already resting at home and that hardly anyone walked along such streets except for people like the local bandits. At that moment, The girl Layla had already given up hope that she would leave them in her dress. They pounced on her like hungry dogs who saw a piece of meat on the road. The lady falls to the floor, realizing that all she can do is give in and give them what they want. When she finally resigned herself to the fact that they would take everything away from her, a miracle happened. Someone heard her and came running to help. An unfamiliar woman screamed, "What's going on here?" and started to disperse everyone one by one. She immediately realized that they were all hurting this girl and warned each of them that if they did not disappear from her sight, they would deeply regret it. It just so happened that they also knew her as the owner of a vegetable shop. So, knowing her character, they didn't even argue. Left alone with her, the girl finally felt relief, and at first didn't even know what to say or how to behave. The woman asked her if everything was okay, and she thanked her and replied that thanks to her, everything was fine. It turns out the woman had noticed her earlier thanks to her expensive dress, so she followed her lead as she felt that it was very dangerous for someone like her to be here. In fact, Layla tried to choose the most modest outfit. Apparently, it was very high-quality clothing, since nobles wear it, so it's absolutely natural that she was noticed. And since then, she's been more attentive to this, so as not to get into such situations again. That day, the girl said that she had to leave her home, or rather, run away from there. Also, a little later, a decision was made to heal the wounds on the legs, which would have taken too long to heal on their own. Only at the end did the woman introduce herself. Her name is Kiara. She lives right near the area where they met. The lady thanked him for his concern, and then introduced herself, although she could have done this much earlier. Then, the next day, Kiara offered to give the girl a short tour of the market so that she could get her bearings better and avoid walking down dubious streets next time. They were greeted by very friendly and kind salespeople, whom the woman planned to introduce her to a little later. They all liked the girl right away, but they didn't know then that they would eventually work together. The market on this street is so good that you have to try hard to find bad goods, let alone expired ones. The first thing she noticed for herself was that this place was very different from White France. Here, everyone works hard and doesn't just pretend. There, everything is like her friends. If Layla had been born in a similar country, she would have been able to escape from that family and start working. A little later, when they had already started inviting her over so that she wouldn't be bored, Layla began to get used to it and was already thinking about maybe staying here for a while, but she was ashamed that she could cause everyone inconvenience and distract them from work. The kids here really liked Layla, especially her red hair, which is rare here. They immediately found a common language, and she was afraid to upset them, that sooner or later they would have to say goodbye, and this could happen in the near future. Then she said that she never liked her hair because in her homeland, she was constantly called the Scarlet Maiden. No one understood what she was talking about. It was unimportant for them. But the girl understood that this was not something they could understand. Layla had always been worried about this since she stayed at the palace, as she thought, people in this country do not know the legend of the Scarlet Maiden, so no one said anything about her hair color. This power cured Harisha, and this hair, only unpleasant memories and phrases of some people remained from it. When she thinks about it, she starts to feel sad and compare herself with others who don't have such problems. She would really like to be in their place for at least one day. When evening came, they offered her to stay with them for the night. Since it was too late and it was possible that someone would attack her again, this area was unsafe, so it was better to be on the safe side. The man even promised to take her home in the morning, or wherever she needed to go, but the sooner the better, so as not to waste work time. Then she said that she could do anything, do any job, only if they allowed her to stay here. She really didn't want to seem impudent, but the situation was such that she couldn't do otherwise. She had to say it as it was, or rather ask. The girl explained that she simply had nowhere to go, so she was ready to beg them just to stay. She was willing to sleep outside, just for safety. That was all she needed then. The woman replied that she had no choice, only on one condition. In exchange, she would not treat her as a guest. She heard that the girl had been through a lot and was completely satisfied with such a new employee who could be given all the work that she disliked the most. In fact, it didn't matter to her at all what to do, as long as they agreed. The reason she was able to gather the courage to offer this is precisely because she met Harisha. She wants them to not forget each other, even though they are at a distance, if only she knew that it is absolutely mutual. Meanwhile, another training session began on the court, only this time everything was very serious. They give it their all, and are not even shy about saying that someone is doing something wrong. The thing is, The residents are really looking forward to showing off their perfect skills at the Dragon Festival, and one of them will be performing there. In the end, they agreed that everything would go well, and today, the training ended earlier than usual so as not to waste all their energy. The day has finally arrived when the long-awaited Dragon Festival takes place. People are slowly gathering. Everyone has their own things to do. Everyone is trying to get everything done that is required of them. The market understands that since it's a festival that starts at noon, they're unlikely to have any customers, so it's best to close early to avoid wasting time and spend the afternoon doing something more productive than just standing around. Leela talks to a girl who begs her to go to the festival with her, even though she heard earlier that she is not in the mood today. At that moment, a buyer approached them, the first one of the day, and when Layla looked at him, she couldn't believe her eyes. The guy asks if there are any ideas on what to give a runaway girl to definitely win her over. Sir Glenn somehow miraculously found her, although she was completely sure that no one she knew could be here. After that, they moved aside and hid behind the wall. She just had a couple of questions for him, although he also had some. She wondered how he managed to find her. It had only been a couple of days, especially since the market was big and it was difficult to notice her. At least, that's what she thought. The guy smiles and says that everything was easier than she could have imagined. It was enough to just ask people about the girl with red hair. She didn't take this into account. She probably should have warned everyone who knew her not to tell anyone such information, that she worked here or even showed up at the market. Layla wanted to apologize for making him go all the way, but she still wanted to warn him that she wasn't going to come back. He says that he understands this perfectly well, so he came here for another reason. He has a personal request. It's not just that he came before the festival starts. His request is connected to this. He wants her to see how brave His Majesty is. He has been preparing for this, and it needs to be seen. Meanwhile, the Dragon King Festival is declared open, and now comes what everyone has been waiting for. The king himself and the goddess Harisha are present, and today she looks especially beautiful. Some did not expect that she would sit right next to His Majesty. Some were divided into two camps. Some were neutral about it, and some were very negative. Rumors have been circulating that, if this is the case, they will most likely get married soon. However, every time there is even the slightest clue, it is a reason for rumors. And every time they concern a wedding, the girl's thoughts at this moment, His Majesty and Lady Harisha, they are so adored by the people, will finally be together. Meanwhile, the dancers come out. They want to put on a festive show and make this festival a little brighter. They all look great. Their movements are very graceful, as if they had been rehearsing for several years to make everything perfectly synchronized. Meanwhile, Glenn returned. His Majesty couldn't ignore it. He asked everyone why he was late. The guy said he bumped into a nice girl in town and they talked a little. Tells him that he always tries to get out of a situation with a joke instead of just giving in. And the guy says that's very rude. He's not fooling anyone. The gentleman asks how everything went, whether he conquered the girl. Although this is Glenn's personal matter, about which he is not obliged to say anything. And he also called her the most beautiful, knowing that she could hear it and was somewhere nearby. Layla listens to what he says and doesn't yet fully realize that he's talking about her. Meanwhile, the king addresses the people. They are all gathered here today, and first of all, he wants to thank them for it. The Dragon King Festival is a celebration in honor of the first Black Dragon King, a man renowned for his exceptional martial arts skills, the power and splendor of the first king of the Black Dragons. They became the foundation of the world of this country, and the light that guides them to this day. He, as the ruling king, as the heir to his will, wants to test the edge of his sword against the strongest masters of reality, in order to confirm his strength and glory. If he ever disgraces the name of the first king of the Black Dragons, he will burn his throne without a second thought. He will never go against the will of his people, and if it comes to that, he will agree to let the flame take his life. And after that, he said that now, let the heavens judge this performance, because they know better. He is so determined for this fight that it seems impossible for him to lose. He hasn't shown it before, but today he will be in action for the first time, and that makes it even more interesting. He looks so good from the outside that all the attention of people is on him. No one even looks at the king himself. Also, the sword matches his golden eyes very well, but it's not visible from afar. Finally, the kingdom's strongest warriors emerge, with whom His Majesty is ready to fight. He has been preparing for this for so long and so diligently that he doesn't even think about the risk of losing. He even asked his opponents not to hold back and under no circumstances to play along. He asked them all to show what they were capable of, and if he found out that someone had not given it their all, he would punish them for it. Everything was fine before, but for some reason, the last enemy started hiding his face for unknown reasons. The one with whom the king is now competing says that he has dedicated himself entirely to training for this day in order to fight the king and hopes for a worthy match. The king says that he will not disappoint him and also suggests that they do without lengthy introductions and get straight to the point. This time, they both tensed up because everything that had happened before now seemed like a light warm-up. His Majesty is very glad that he has found a worthy opponent. Now he is truly captivated by the process and thinks through every move in advance. He likes to feel that he has a strong opponent in front of him, and that in order to defeat him, he needs to give it his all, and not just swing a sword. The king used his signature strike. It wasn't easy, but he had prepared this maneuver specifically for this occasion. In the end, the victory went to the king. Everything happened very quickly, even faster than expected. There's one last match left, before which I need to regain my strength a little. This will definitely not be a bad thing. Meanwhile, his fiancée says that this year's Dragon King Festival was another success, and she wants to congratulate him on it. Suddenly, out of nowhere, that very last competitor appears. He apparently decided to start the competition early, otherwise it's unclear how else to explain it. The king managed to react in time, only slightly injuring his hand. It was a necessary measure to neutralize the enemy. He grips the sword with all his might, squeezing its sharp edges, and not showing that he feels even the slightest pain like a true king. Each time he proves that nothing is impossible for him, and even in such a situation, he is capable of protecting anyone. No one understands what is happening. There is panic among the people, because this person does not look like an ordinary opponent who is ready to follow the rules. The king really wants to finally look him in the eye to see who dared to attack him. It seems to him that it will be very difficult to do this, but still possible. So he will try. Everyone is so worried about him that there is a lot of noise among the people. They are afraid that the king might get hurt. It's very difficult to be in such an environment. They are afraid to even imagine how he feels being there, in the ring. This fighting style seemed very familiar to him, but the guy still can't quite figure out where he's encountered it before. Perhaps it could be the same assassin he fought earlier, or perhaps not. It is very difficult to recognize him. And meanwhile, the situation is getting more complicated. The enemy seems to only become more resilient and stronger, and the king, on the contrary. Anything can happen at the end of the competition, and serious injuries are definitely inevitable. He no longer knows how to find time to catch his breath. There is not enough air, and because of this, his endurance suffers. This man moves so fast that it is impossible to keep track of him and be prepared for new attacks. At that moment, when everything was too bad, the girl couldn't hold back and screamed so loudly that he could hear her. For him, it was completely unexpected. He definitely didn't expect to see her here, but he got a little distracted, and that's very bad. The king looked to the side to make sure it was the voice that seemed familiar to him. He saw Layla and could not believe his eyes. At that moment, right in the center, a strange glow appeared, from which bright rays emanated.